Entertainment begins with a journey. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101. Half a month later. For 5 consecutive days, Yikai practiced his fundamentals. According to Chen Zhongyu, Yikai would need to practice these skills every day, even if he didn't fight professionally. It was like practicing horse stance every day in martial arts. In the gym, Yikai stopped hitting the sandbag. He assumed a stance, facing the mirror as if facing an enemy. He squatted slightly, his left and right feet moving forward and backward, his center of gravity shifting back and forth. Holding dumbbells, he periodically punched forward. Throughout this process, Yikai had to ensure his punches were perfectly executed. Jingyu called out, "Yikai, do you want to go downstairs and sprint?" Yikai straightened, exhaled, and said, "Sure, let's go." Bajin boxing gym had no rules. Chen Zhongyu only taught you the moves, and then you needed self-discipline. You could rest whenever you felt tired, but once you were rested, you had to keep training. Once you were proficient in a move and ready for the next one, Chen Zhongyu would have you practice another. How far you could push yourself depended entirely on the level of self-discipline you set. Jingyu, a boxing champion, still lives in a house with her fellow apprentices. Her room is small, barely big enough for a bed and a table. Even a simple clothes hanger beside the bed makes it seem cramped. It's not that Jingyu lacks the money to afford a better life. She told Yikai, boxing is like this, it's a poor man's sport. Once you become wealthy and feel you can enjoy it, that's it. It makes sense. Across from the residential complex lies a large square. Nestled between several large residential areas, the square is bustling with activity, singers belting out their megaphones, women square dancing, and elderly men practicing calligraphy. Further in, there are soccer fields, tennis courts, basketball courts, table tennis courts, and other sports facilities. The two reach their usual running spot. Jingyu stretched her body, eager to try, and said, "Let's see who's faster this time." Yikai replied, "Of course you. Start." Jingyu suddenly shouted, then sprinted out like a bullet. "You're cheating." Yikai quickly gave chase. Ha 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 ha. Sprinting is about building physical fitness. In boxing, physical fitness is crucial to winning a match when both sides are evenly matched, especially for lightweight fighters like Jingyu. Because their punches are lighter, knockout chances are rare, and fights can usually drag on for 5 or 6 rounds. Therefore, physical training is particularly important. As the two men ran frantically, a BMX rider nearby sped up, following them, and said, "I'm going to beat Jingyu this time." This person was Song Fei, Jingyu's cycling buddy. The two had cycled to many places together. He was also someone Yikai had met yesterday. Jingyu loved cycling and had cycled to a snowy area last year. After learning about Yikai's experience, she told him, "Flying to a snowy area is so boring. Do you know why snowy areas are so highly praised by cyclists and road trippers?" "Why?" Yikai asked. "Because it's the Sichuan-Tibet road. Going directly to the snowy area to see the scenery is actually meaningless. The most meaningful thing is to go west along the road to Tibet. This road you experience is the place with the best scenery." Yikai may not understand it before, but after a few trips, Yikai understood. The most beautiful scenery is not at the destination, but on the way forward. The sight returned to the square. Yikai and Jingyu both sprinted very fast and often ran back and forth. As a result, even if Song Fei rode his bike, he couldn't keep up with the speed of the two after 2 round trips. He parked the bike to rest and shouted, "Come on." He would jog to adjust his breathing only when he ran out of breath. Then he continued to sprint. After 10 round trips, Jingyu won this race. "I won." Yikai pretended to gasp, clapping his hands and saying, "Great." Song Fei rode over on his bike and said, "I beat Jingyu, so I won too. Come on, I'll treat you to dinner." Before coming here, Yikai had assumed that China's female boxing champion must live in a luxury apartment, with a punching bag and pair balls in the living room, and spend 2 hours punching the bag every night, followed by a milk bath. But there was nothing like that. Even the meals were no different from those of ordinary people. Yikai treated them to some sliced noodles on the street. The noodles here were cut into long strips and prepared in a variety of ways, with a refreshing and chewy taste. Yukai loved the stir-fried sliced noodles with chili peppers, which were rich in red oil and chili peppers. It was spicy, fresh, and fragrant, with a lingering aftertaste. In one word, delicious. The bowls were also enormous, costing 9 yuan a bowl, and the diameter of the bowls was probably 25 centimeters. Half an hour later, 3 empty bowls appeared on the table. Everyone has their own definition of boredom. Drivers find driving boring, office workers find paperwork tedious, and athletes find practicing fundamentals tedious. Most sports that require fundamental skills are tedious. Waking up early every day, whether you like it or not, means spending countless hours practicing, especially for a newcomer like Yukai, who practices from morning till night. Thanks to his natural talent, Yukai learned quickly. He mastered the steps, the punches, and all the combinations. Finally, on his 10th day at the gym, Chen Zhongyu agreed to let Yukai spar with someone. The person sparring with Yukai wore protective gear, and he could only defend against Yukai's attacks. Everyone in the gym knew Yukai was a heavy hitter by now. To ensure Yukai's form was correct, Chen Zhongyu had him punch with dumbbells. He was practically teaching him like a close disciple. Facing such a person, it would be a lie to say he wasn't nervous. Furthermore, it was Yukai's first time fighting an opponent. What if his punch missed the target and didn't hit the protective gear? Hundreds of kilograms. Are you ready? Chen Zhongyu asked. All right, Yukai said. Yes, the sparring partner nodded cautiously. Begin. Chen Zhongyu stood inside the ring, circling Yukai and reminding him, step, step, watch your step. Turn around, hit him, right. Even with protective gear, the sparring partner felt his breath catch when Yukai's punches landed on the gear. Perhaps only the senior brother could rival Yukai's punching skills. The sparring partner's training gradually progressed, from pure offense to counterattacks, and then to Yukai's defense. Between the sunrises and sunsets, Yukai also completed his transformation from an ordinary person to a boxing expert. As the spring festival approached, the students gradually went home, and there were only 3 people in the boxing gym. Jingyu was jumping rope, Chen Zhongyu was sitting in a rocking chair reading the newspaper, and Yukai was punching the sandbag. Yukai's bare upper body was bronzed, his muscles temporarily engorged with blood after the workout, appearing stronger than usual. Sweat flowed down the contours of his muscles and dripped onto the ground. Bang! 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 Chen Zhongyu put down the newspaper and said, Ziokai, are you leaving today? Yukai picked up a sports towel from the side, wiped his face, and put it on his shoulder. Yes, but master, I will come to see you often in the future. Chen Zhongyu laughed and said, who wants you to see? Jingyu nodded at Yukai as a greeting, put down the jump rope, and picked up the swing rope alone to start a new round of training. She wouldn't go home for the new year. Actually, you can vote for the lucky bag. Do you have so little confidence in me? Why is no one going all in? Chapter 102. Check out. Yukai gathered his belongings and left the dormitory. Looking up, he vaguely caught sight of someone staring at him through the gym's glass. But the feeling faded quickly, and he couldn't tell if it was his master or Jingyu. Chen Zhongyu would also be leaving for the Lunar New Year holiday. He had his own family. By then, Jingyu would be the only one left in the gym. Boxing is a very lonely sport, or perhaps boxing itself is loneliness. Jingyu was like that, alone, training, living, and even competing. Songfei had pursued Jingyu for 3 years, yet she hadn't expressed any feelings beyond friendship. Perhaps she had grown accustomed to the loneliness of boxing. Yukai's mood grew darker the further he walked from the gym, ultimately fading into a sigh. Leaving the gate of the complex, Yukai searched for a ride on his phone. Yukai. As he waited, Songfei's voice came from behind him, still on his BMX, helmet and knee pads. Are you coming to see me off? Yukai asked. He parked the car in front of Yukai and said, you're so disloyal. You just left without saying anything. If Jingyu hadn't mentioned it to me, I wouldn't have known. Yukai smiled at him and said, I don't like to be seen off when I leave a place. It's too sad. At this moment, he suddenly thought about Saoirse when he saw her off. Did she feel the same way as he did when he saw her off? Parting is not a pleasant feeling. Having someone see you off only makes the departure even more painful. I did teach you BMX for a few days, didn't I? You're so heartless, you didn't even tell me you were leaving. Yukai took out his phone and shook it, saying, we have WeChat, right? We can chat with anyone anywhere. Why bother? After a few words of small talk, a white Audi on the side of the road honked twice, lowered the window, and asked, "Boss Yi?" Song Fei laughed and said, "Then I won't see you off. I wish Boss Yi a bright future and great fortune." Ye Kai jokingly cupped his fists and said, "I don't deserve it. See you in the underworld." He got in the car and drove off. Song Fei continued to shout, "Let's go for a bike ride together next time we have a chance." As the car drove away, Ye Kai mentally said, "Okay." He had bought quite a bit of stuff this time. While checking in his luggage at the airport, a Sichuan Airlines staff member asked, "Mr. Yi, you've earned quite a lot of air miles this year. Do you need a membership card?" Ye Kai had almost forgotten about it, so he replied, "Yes." After checking in his luggage, Ye Kai went out to another Sichuan Airlines counter to fill out his information so that Sichuan Airlines could mail the membership card to his home. After submitting his information, Ye Kai received a temporary card. Airline members accumulate miles with every flight. Reaching a certain number of miles grants them privileges and seat reservations, lounge access, cabin upgrades, and more. Ye Kai figured he'd be flying more often in the future, so he applied for one. In flight. The 2020 Spring Festival is approaching, and walking down the street, lanterns are everywhere. They're hung on streetlights, outside hotels, and many other places are decorated with colorful lights. At night, neon lights flicker everywhere. This is the most important holiday of the year, but also the hardest time to buy tickets. Luckily, Ye Kai was flying, having purchased his ticket several days in advance. Back in Chengdu, Ye Kai called his landlord. "Is this Xiao Yi? When are you coming to pay the rent?" "Uncle Zhang," Ye Kai said, unlocking his door with his key. "I think I'll be moving out this time, so I won't be renewing my lease. I'm packing up now. When do you think you can come over?" "Oh, you got a promotion? Congratulations. I'll be right there." "Okay, I'll wait for you then." After hanging up, Ye Kai checked the time. It was 6 o'clock. Did they have dinner? Ye Kai had wanted to go downstairs for something to eat, but now he had no choice but to wait for the landlord to come inspect the apartment. The landlord's name was Zhang Shan, and he lived in this neighborhood. His family, relocated due to demolition, owned 4 apartments. Zhang Shan spent his days at home, wandering around, collecting rent, and playing mahjong. He married and had children at 40. His wife worked as a cashier at a supermarket, and she also had to take care of little Yin Liu. Ye Kai had always looked down on this man. 20 minutes later, Zhang Shan knocked on the door. Even in the dead of winter, Zhang Shan didn't dare dress in his typical landlord attire. He wore a thick, warm coat and a woolen hat to hide his thinning hair. He walked around the room, examining the old furniture Ye Kai had left behind. "No problem, Xiao Yi," he said. "Did you get a promotion?" Ye Kai replied, "Almost. I'll tidy up a bit later. I'll leave the appliances here. I'll let you know when I move in tomorrow." He was feeling a little hungry and wanted to get something to eat, so he said, "Then I'll call you tomorrow." Okay, it's time. I'll treat you to hot pot." Ye Kai opened the door for him and said, "No thanks. I've been having a sore throat lately and can't eat that. Next time for sure." "Okay, fine. I'm leaving then." Closing the door, Ye Kai sorted through the things he'd brought back and went downstairs to order 2 dishes. He was finally leaving the neighborhood. He hadn't lived here for a long time in the past few months, but when it came time to leave, he still felt a bit reluctant. The next day, he rented a Wuling Hongguang and began moving. He tossed out personal belongings that needed to be thrown away, and packed everything he needed to move into the car. He would take everything back to Sweet City and store it there. Once the March royalties arrived, Ye Kai planned to buy himself a large house, preferably near the beach, with a sea view villa being even better. Ye Kai thought about his remaining balance and estimated the March royalties. Forget it, a commercial property would be the better option. Meanwhile, in Hong Kong Island, Rachel was contacting headquarters. She hoped to produce the latest public service announcement before the first day of the Chinese New Year. This ad would be aired in most countries around the world, hoping to change the current situation of wildlife. The entire campaign revolved around Ye Kai's article, "No Buying, No Killing." These public service announcements generally don't have any extra advertising fees. They're broadcast directly on national television channels. Other channels wouldn't be so kind as to offer free advertising. Fewer people in China watch television these days, but New Year's is an exception. Who doesn't have a TV at a dinner party? So sometimes, there's a single TV, with over a dozen people watching. After Rachel reported her concerns to the company, she thought of Yukai. He's a young, talented photographer. Okay, I'll recommend him to headquarters. Chapter 103 Life. After years of hard work, the family finally had a truly prosperous new year. They moved into a new house, and the sun shone brightly when they opened the curtains. There was even a small balcony off the living room. Lee Meili was the happiest of the family. Her son had become successful, and she no longer had to deal with the smoke from barbecues. She had plenty of time to play mahjong and square dance. It was just too much free time, so Lee Meili had always wanted to raise a grandson. Yukai was her only child, but unfortunately, he was getting older and more independent, and he loved to fly around and hadn't found a girlfriend yet. She didn't know when her wish for a grandson would come true. Neighbors in their early 40s already had grandchildren, and they were so envious. Ye Zhuqiang began to question his life. His son looked different almost every time he came home. Not only was he more handsome, but he also had a unique temperament. He wrote songs and books, and he often spoke English on the phone. 4 out of 10 calls were to foreigners. He sat on the sofa, sipping tea and reading the newspaper, but his eyes kept glancing at Yukai, who was on the phone. Was that my son? After dinner, Yukai went out for a walk. Xiancheng, founded during the Eastern Han Dynasty and formerly known as Hainan, was renowned nationwide for its abundant sugarcane and preserved fruit production. At its peak, it produced a quarter of the nation's sugar. After transforming into an industrial city, it became a major hub for machinery, steel, and auto parts, and 5 years ago, it also began producing vanadium and titanium. The environment has deteriorated steadily, but this is essential for economic development. The price paid is that the city hasn't seen a starry night sky for many years, and the Tuojiang River isn't as clear as it once was for Yukai's childhood, but it remains a majestic river. From the side gate of the residential complex, you'll find Xiancheng's Qingxi Wetland Park. Built along the Tuojiang River, Qingxi Park isn't ideal for exercise, but it's a great place for strolls. Its winding paths are lined with evergreen trees. Many birds visit the park during the winter, and walking there might just land you in a balm. Don't look up. Yukai walked along the park path until he reached the Tuojiang River, leaning on the railing to watch the river flow. It had been a long time since he had seen the river like this. He remembered his childhood, when security measures were inadequate. Many mischievous children would take cold showers here, and several would disappear every year. The wind was strong, and Yukai clutched his hat, preparing to go to Wanda to see a movie. Help! A woman's voice echoed from the woods, accompanied by the terrified screams of a young girl, running quickly toward the river. At the same time, a man's anxious voice echoed. Haha, haha. Come back. Yukai was shocked. In broad daylight, in the open air, someone was molesting a decent girl? Was this the time his newly learned boxing skills would come in handy? Just as Yukai was about to enter the woods, a woman in a white down jacket ran out. Don't be afraid. He had barely finished his words when a husky chased after her. Then, a man holding a leash also ran out from the path in the woods, chasing after her, shouting, haha, come back, haha, beautiful girl, don't run. Yukai. So haha is a dog? Speechless. So self-indulgent. Hey. Yukai called out, drawing the husky's attention. He then squatted down and continued, come here, brother. The husky paused, and the girl took the opportunity to bite. Yukai possessed a bonus to animal intimacy, which was even greater for these already familiar creatures. With a girl so frightened, he couldn't just stand by and watch. The husky was beautiful, likely freshly bathed, its fur clean and fluffy. It wasn't fat or thin, its blue eyes striking a striking brilliance. Standing still, it looked handsome and imposing. The man, relieved that his husky hadn't chased the girl, was about to retie it when it ran off again, toward the handsome man, and the puddle nearby. Yukai squatted on the ground, invitingly, his hands ready to catch the beautiful husky. But the husky leaped past Yukai. Just past him. In short, it leaped right past him. Yukai felt like he'd been struck by lightning. What the hell? Even when the husky leaped into the puddle, Yukai didn't even have time to dodge. He simply stood expressionlessly, staring blankly at the dog. Could this be a husky? It wasn't even as cute as a little lion. Covered in mud, the husky ran towards Yukai. Yukai was horrified and ran to his owner, saying, catch your dog. Perhaps disgusted by the filth on the husky, his owner also ran after Yukai. I can't catch it. But he was no match for Yukai's speed. The dog quickly pinned its owner down, just enough to hook the leash and restrain him. Yukai breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the man. He was about Yukai's age, wearing a dark gray cashmere coat, but now soaked by the dirty water, he looked very disheveled. Hello, my name is Jobin. Woof woof. Yes, my name is Yukai. When Yukai looked at the dog, the husky's tail wagged even more merrily, its mouth wide open, as if grinning at Yukai. Woof woof. Jobin gripped the rope tightly, thought for a moment, and said, Oh. You're the blogger, the travel blogger? Yes, I've read your travelogue. Just write something. Thank you for your support. Jobin suddenly became much more enthusiastic towards Yukai, pointing to a stone bench by the roadside and saying, Sit, sit. It rained heavily last night. Oh, then let's take a walk. You see, this husky really likes you. The dog was covered in dirty water, and when he shook himself a little, water splashed everywhere. Why did he look a little disgusted? As the saying goes, those who show kindness without any reason are either treacherous or thieves. If it was a fan meeting, he would definitely not be like this now, so Yukai guessed that he must have something to tell him. So, Yukai asked directly, Is there anything you can do? After a moment of silence, Jobin said embarrassedly, I just started working at a magazine, and I was thinking, could you submit some articles to our magazine? Travel magazine. Yes. He fumbled around in his body and found his mobile phone. He said as he searched, I work in Jiangsu and Zhejiang. Our magazine ranks among the top 10 in the country. The travel magazine only published its first issue last year. I found it, take a look. He handed the phone to Yukai. Yukai doesn't like domestic travel magazines. Domestic magazines have a lot of frameworks, and Yukai is a very thoughtful person. His shooting style is varied and very different from the style of domestic magazines. It means that they are not suitable. He had considered submitting photos to China National Geographic before, but it was not accepted, so there was no follow-up. The cover of a magazine was displayed on the phone. Life? Chapter 104 Happy New Year. The concept of travel has been around for a long time. As a modern lifestyle, travel magazines have long been available. This Jiangsu and Zhejiang publishing house was surprisingly late to the party. The cover depicts a desolate highway, its straight path disappearing into the horizon. Blue sky and white clouds frame the symmetrical yellow sand, a work likely from a desert location. Jobin introduced, using beauty to convey emotion and writing to convey truth as the founding philosophy of Life magazine. We welcome photographers from all over the world to submit their photographic experiences. Of course, travel photographers like you are the perfect fit for Life magazine. Yukai handed the phone back to him, saying, If you find suitable photos, I'll consider submitting them to you. Jobin took the phone with a forced smile and fumbled around for his wallet. He had to hold the husky, which was struggling to break free from its leash, so he had to use one hand to do anything. Jobin pulled out a business card and handed it to Yukai, saying, If you have such an idea, please don't forget to contact me. I'm always looking forward to your submission. Yes. Yukai took it, put it in his pocket, and turned back to walk out of the park. Have a nice day. As Yukai walked away, he could hear his voice scolding the dog. Haha, I told you not to run around. Run around. Oh. Yukai fumbled with a business card in his pocket, thinking, if there's a suitable photo, give it a try. Life isn't easy. Jobin was like himself, fresh out of college, except he'd been on the same page for too long and didn't understand the rules of the workplace, while Jobin had clearly adapted. Harmony between man and nature, let nature take its course. Meeting is fate. Good movies are released on Lunar New Year's Day, but some films, while seemingly inferior to blockbusters but still considered superior, are released a few days before the holiday. Yukai was watching one of those movies. It looked crude at first glance, but it was so well made that at least Yukai felt his 2 hours in the theater were worthwhile. The final confession scene using the dashcam was a stroke of genius. When he got home, Lee Meili was still cooking. You're back. Yes. Yukai changed his shoes at the door, wondering if he should tell his mother tonight that he had found his grandfather's old place. Forget it, I'd better go and see it myself later. They've been thinking about it for decades. What if they're still disappointed when they finally go? It's better not to know about it from the beginning. Time slowly slipped by. The new year of 2020 quietly arrived. According to previous traditions, they would have celebrated at their uncle's house, but this year, their sister had just moved, so Lee Dashin decided to celebrate at hers. The Yi family's Lee clan wasn't large, so many formalities didn't need to be followed. Celebrating New Year's Eve was the same wherever they went. After dinner, Yikai began checking Weibo. Rachel had previously messaged him about his surprise, and Yikai guessed his article might be published in Huaxia. At 7 o'clock, his Weibo account was updated. Public welfare activist Yikai issued a declaration, "No trade, no kill." Recently, Chinese citizen Yikai witnessed a plight of wild animals and cried out, "We live on the same planet, and all life should be equal." Yet, every day, wild animals are killed for the special needs of some people. The trade of animal products is driven by demand, but that demand isn't irreplaceable. Excessive exploitation of animal resources is unacceptable. Luxury comes at the cost of lives. Please protect wildlife. A public service announcement produced by Wildlife Conservation International will be broadcast worldwide. Greek letters I, no buy, no kill, video. Yikai's article has been edited down, leaving out much of its essence, but the essence remains. Attached to the end is a public service announcement. The actor filming the ad is an international movie star. Holding a photo of a pangolin, he said, "Some people are so clever as to eat these lovely animals, pangolins. This is actually very dangerous, as you increase your risk of contracting dangerous bacteria and parasites. If you take their scales as medicine, they're actually just keratin, similar to the composition of your fingernails. But this has driven pangolins to the brink of extinction. Never eat pangolins, buy their scales instead. No buy, no kill." 4 such short videos were filmed, depicting pangolins, elephants, rhinos, and sharks. Yikai thought again of the elephant whose ivory was taken. Those who haven't witnessed that scene in person might not understand the sorrow that permeated everyone at the time. Humans may not need ivory, but elephants will die without it. Humans may not need shark fin, but sharks will die without it. And once a species becomes extinct, many of the animals surrounding it will gradually become extinct, ultimately impacting the human ecosystem. Why destroy the ecosystem for something we don't need? Scroll down, there are already many comments. Like, this post was actually posted by a Chinese person. Who is Yikai? So, as long as there's ivory for sale, elephants will be hunted? Is that what you mean? We used to have a lot of pangolins here, but now they're gone. Too many termites have eaten all the trees on the mountain. At user FSSZ 252,448. Yikai is a photographer. His Bilibili live stream is 4,944,574. Ziokai, come out to watch the Spring Festival Gala. Oh. Yikai got out of bed, straightened his clothes, and went out to watch the Spring Festival Gala. Yeah, that's a regular feature. A group of people sat in the living room. My cousin smiled at Yikai. She was one of those who had guessed Yikai had a girlfriend, but she hadn't told my uncle and the others. She thought Yikai was in his room talking on the phone. It was almost time, and the commercial Yikai had seen before came on TV. Was the WPSA that outrageous? Advertising directly on the Spring Festival Gala, how much would it cost? Then Yikai remembered that they were an international organization, and it seemed like they could air a public service announcement on a program like this for free. Lee Meili, peeling an apple, smacked her lips at the commercial and said, "Look how pitiful that elephant is. Can't they just chop off its tusks? They have to kill it." "Mom, let me warn you, the ivory trade is illegal," Yikai said. "Hey," Lee Meili said, "I'm just saying it. I'm not interested in that. I just think that saying is pretty good, no buying, no killing." Yikai smiled smugly, not telling his mother that it was his own article. Watching the Spring Festival Gala together was a ritual. They sat together and complained about how the show was getting worse with each passing year. It was a little after 10 o'clock when my uncle and his family went home. The house was empty again. Lights were everywhere, bright even in the middle of the night. Lee Meili and Yikai were clearing the table, moving the leftovers to the dining room table and covering them. As they turned off the lights, Lee Meili sighed. The last light in the room dimmed. At 12 o'clock sharp, fireworks were set off outside the window, a dazzling display of light and the sound of firecrackers. 2020, Happy New Year. Chapter 105 Food Festival. The WPSA is truly a major international organization. A promotional video quickly spread around the world, remaining a hot topic, staying at the top of China's trending topics for over 10 days before being knocked off the top by subsequent news. As the contributor of the ad copy, Yukai didn't actually earn much. Only a small number of Chinese noticed Yukai on Weibo and, out of curiosity, clicked to follow him, earning him 5 talent points. To his surprise, the WPSA actually used this phrase as its slogan. A mere article title, yet it has become synonymous with wildlife conservation. This was something Yukai never imagined when he wrote the article. But Yukai wasn't entirely without merit. Within the WPSA, there are 4 ranks. Besides the highest-ranking president, there are D, P, and G ranks. G ranks are for general personnel, often recruited locally. P ranks, on the other hand, are for business personnel, such as trained experts or photojournalists like Yukai. In short, they require a high level of professionalism and are typically recruited worldwide. There are 5 levels, from P1 to the highest level, P5. Yukai had skipped 3 levels in his promotion within the WPSA, reaching P4. This was the reward the WPSA gave him. If he could advance 1 more level to P5, he would be equivalent to D1 manager. Phyllis was a D1 manager. Phyllis had been messaging Yukai for the past few days, her words congratulating him but also tinged with a hint of jealousy. This was the first time Yukai felt the benefits of the promotion. He replied, "Thank you." On the 5th day of the Lunar New Year, Yukiang went to the factory to prepare for work. Yukai also packed his bags, ready to go to Australia to film a commercial and enjoy ocean sports like surfing, diving, and swimming. He heard that summer had just passed and the weather was gradually turning into beautiful autumn, making it the perfect time for surfing, with great waves crashing from the ocean to the beach. But a call from France changed Yukai's mind. France. A grand food exchange festival was being planned in the south. As one of the most renowned chefs in southern France, Rupert was naturally invited by the organizers to participate in this culinary extravaganza. After preparing the food for the food festival, he thought of Yukai. Invite Yukai to be a judge? No. Rupert didn't have the energy to do that. He simply remembered Yukai and his remarkable taste. He could actually describe the specific method of the dish while tasting it. What kind of incredible connoisseurship was that? If someone like him could participate in this food exchange festival, then this culinary extravaganza would truly be worthy of its name. Moreover, he was extremely confident in his new creation, confident that it would surely satisfy the discerning Chinese palate. Looking at the dish, Rupert's face shone with confidence. He searched for Yukai's number on his phone and muttered to himself, "This time, I've incorporated both Chinese and French cooking methods. This dish is sure to captivate everyone in both countries." He found it. Rupert dialed the number, and a familiar voice soon reached the other end. "Hello? Is this Rupert?" Yukai had a habit of saving names so he could see who was looking for him by looking at the caller ID. He imagined that sometime in Burgundy, he'd visit Rupert's restaurant and enjoy a French meal. The beef stew Rupert had made last time had left a deep impression on Yukai. "It's me, Kai. Good morning." Yukai was fishing in a pond full of farmed carp and grass carp, making it incredibly easy to catch. It was a perfect fishing spot for a novice like Yukai, who enjoyed fishing but wasn't very proficient. "Long time no see. I was wondering when I'd visit you in France." "Haha. Are you in Chengdu again?" "No," Rupert explained. "Lyon, France, is hosting a food festival soon. There will be many French chefs and discerning diners. I'd like to invite you to join us. Believe me, you'll experience our country's authentic culinary culture." "Really? Oh, that's fantastic," Yukai said. "I've always dreamed of this opportunity to try delicacies from all over the country all at once. Is your food festival real? With the best French chefs?" Rupert laughed and said, "Of course. This is the biggest food festival in southern China in recent years. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. It's in a few days. Do you have time?" "Okay, of course. Honestly, I can't wait." After hanging up the phone, Yukai gave the fishing line a sharp tug. A carp weighing about 6 taels was pulled up, the small fish swaying back and forth on the line, trying to break free and return to the water. Yukai found the 2 largest fish in the bucket and placed the remaining smaller ones in another small pond. It might be morning in France, but in China it was almost dinner time. The most convenient thing about this fish pond was that it was located on a suburban highway. The road from Xiancheng was all cement, and once you arrived You could just turn into a flat, self-built pond. The owner expertly prepared the fish and said, 4 pounds, 26 yuan. Yukai scanned the payment code with WeChat and drove off with a prepared fish. He also talked about going to Australia. Well, that didn't matter. He could attend the food festival and then go to Australia. Fortunately, he hadn't told Dinian beforehand that he was going, otherwise he would have missed the French food festival. His conversation with Rupert was half politeness, but he also truly wanted to go. There are 3 great culinary kingdoms in the world: China, Turkey, and France. Many places claim China is the leader, but in reality, citizens of every country have their own opinions when they travel abroad. Some countries haven't heard of the term 3 great culinary kingdoms, but they firmly believe their own food is the most delicious. This is about national honor, and people from any country will not give it up. If you want to truly experience which country's food tastes good, it is useless to just listen, you must taste it yourself. Yukai didn't know about other French dishes, but the taste of that beef really caught Yukai's taste buds, making Yukai always look forward to other French food. Our Chinese cuisine has 8 major cuisines, and there are many small cuisines. But foreign meals are just a little bit different, so Yukai also wants to see why France can rely on these cooking methods to become recognized by most Chinese people. One of the 3 major culinary kingdoms. P.S. Do you have that one? It is refreshed once a day, and every author wants it very much. Chapter 106 Paris. Discover a new region, France, reward. 300,000 yuan, reward, French. After exiting Charles de Gaulle Airport, Yukai didn't contact Rupert immediately. He had already inquired about the exact start time of the food festival, he just needed to arrive in Lyon before it opened. From today until the start of the food festival, Yukai belonged to Paris. Paris is a romantic city. This phrase has been repeated countless times, becoming ingrained in many people's minds. When these people think of traveling abroad, France is their first choice. Consequently, Paris is the world's most visited city, welcoming over 40 million visitors annually. While countless tourists visit Paris, Parisian thieves are also watching. Yukai was on a bus heading to the Place de l'Opéra. While the Place de l'Opéra may be unfamiliar to many, the Paris Opera is a well-known Parisian attraction. The Place de l'Opéra is located in front of the main entrance of the opera and is located in the 2nd arrondissement. Paris is actually quite large, divided into the Petit Paris and the Grand Paris. Petit Paris refers to the inner city within the ring road, with a permanent population of approximately 2 million. 20 arrondissements spiral outward from the center. Some areas are very safe, while others you just have to hope you don't get noticed. Chinese people are a favorite target for thieves, not because they're specifically Chinese, but simply because they're wealthy. Greater Paris is enormous, roughly 3/4 the size of Beijing. Almost all of Paris's attractions are within Lesser Paris, such as the Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame, the Louvre, the Champs-Élysées. It's worth noting that Paris is plagued by pickpockets, a point of criticism for many tourists. On the bus, Yukai periodically checked to see if his suitcase was still there. It contained his DSLR camera, notebook, clothes, and more. And most importantly, his passport and ID, which he kept close to his body in his travel bag. There's a saying, a tourist in Paris who hasn't been robbed hasn't really been on a trip. So caution is essential. After getting off the bus, Yukai saw the almost mythical Paris and the Paris Opera House 200 meters away. Is that the Paris Opera House? He saw an exquisite building, with its many arched columns, giving it a Greek feel. Atop the rooftop was a pale blue column, with the golden angels holding scepters standing on either side, as if welcoming all guests. It truly shimmered, and one wondered if it was made of gold. Yukai, pulling his luggage, headed towards the Paris Opera, 300 meters away. In front of the opera house stood a small square where a street band was performing. They numbered 15, a small symphony orchestra. The rhythm of the song they were playing suggested the light, but the arrangement had been distorted beyond recognition, leaving only a hint of the light in the melody. They were performing directly towards the Paris Opera, so many people sat on the steps in front, filming the orchestra's spectacular performance with their phones. While they didn't see a performance inside the opera house, the experience of seeing a performance outside was worthwhile. However, due to its proximity to the street and the large number of tourists, the visual experience was somewhat diminished. On the opera house wall, Yukai spotted a poster describing a modern ballet by the Stuttgart Ballet, but tickets were sold out. After wandering around the Paris Opera for a while, Yukai discovered that visitors could enter through the back door for a fee of €10 per person. But looking at his suitcase and backpack, he decided to head to the hotel first. While the opera house was modernized these days, he couldn't just lug his suitcase inside. Give the builders some credit. I'll definitely come back after I shower. His hotel was only 500 meters away, still a beautiful European-style building. Yukai didn't know what the architectural style was yet, but he'd definitely check it out when he got there. Looking at the front of the hotel, the entrance was surprisingly the same oval-shaped archway as the opera house, with the hotel's name, Mercure Paris Opera, written on it. Yukai dragged his suitcase inside, and soon a man in waiter's clothes came to his aid, asking, "Sir, do you need any help?" "Not at this time, thank you," he said in a perfect Parisian accent. "Is this just a short walk still necessary? That dip would be a bit too easy." The hotel was lit in a warm hue, with two symmetrical rows of small ceiling lights extending down the hallway. Of course, the first thing Yukai saw upon entering the hotel was the beautiful receptionist. She might be a mix of Nordic and Asian descent, with beautiful features and a smile that revealed a set of white teeth that warmed his heart. "Hello," Yukai said. "Hello, do you have a reservation?" she asked. "Of course." Yukai took out his ID and checked in. A day here cost €300, or 2,300 Chinese yuan. While he could find a cheaper hotel, after experiencing the service and convenience of a high-end hotel, Yukai really didn't want to stay in a cheap one when he had more money. Besides, he spent his days traveling, and what if he lost something in an unsafe hotel? And he longed to see another hotel like the African Cliff Hotel, a hotel that could offer him a thrilling surprise. That wasn't something he'd find in those cheap hotels. Nodding to the receptionist, Yukai picked up his luggage and headed further down the hallway. Several rest areas were surrounded by wooden buildings on either side of the hallway. From the open doors, Yukai spotted small, colorful round tables, likely places for coffee and reading. When he walked to the elevator, Yukai was greatly surprised. It was a super old style. It was even older than those elevators in Hong Kong movies that had to be opened by one's own hands, and the space inside was very large. If it wasn't an imitation of an antique, then this elevator should have a history of hundreds of years. He opened a circular archway and walked in. The elevator was not very wide, but very deep. It was estimated to be 3 or 4 meters deep from the elevator door. The elevator was surrounded by wooden baffles and had a hollow window on the upper side. The buttons were similar to modern buttons. Yukai pressed 3 and then waited quietly for the elevator to rise. Looking out of the hollow window, he could only see the corridor that spiraled around the elevator. Yukai's first impression of the hotel was great. It was definitely not because of the beautiful receptionist outside, but because of the design of this hotel, which made Yukai feel like he was back in France 200 years ago. Chapter 107 Paris Opera House. Upon entering the room, unfortunately, it didn't share the same stunning charm, but the decor was still refreshing. It was a small room. The bathroom was on the left, spacious and equipped with a bathtub and shower, but the bedroom was a bit small, with a distance of 1.5 meters between the wall and the foot of the bed. There was a small table in the corner near the balcony. After putting down his luggage, Yukai walked over and pushed aside the curtains. Outside, there was a balcony about 2 meters wide, which he could step out onto. Below him lay a rue scribe, and across from him stood the Musée des Parfums de la Fragonard. The street was bustling with people, nearly a third of whom were tourists from all over the world. Paris has so many attractions, and the Paris Opera House is the only major attraction near this street. But why are there so many tourists here? The reason lies across the street. Looking further out from where Yukai was, he saw an 8-story building, resembling a palatial palace. This was the Galeries Lafayette department store. Beneath the massive, Byzantine-style dome with its gilded ornaments, the figures of tourists came and went. It felt like attending a medieval party, making shopping a true pleasure. Furthermore, WeChat Pay is accepted here, attracting many Chinese tourists. I'll go back when I have time. I need to shower first. Yukai yawned and drew the curtains, but left the window open, letting the breeze rustle through them, bringing a touch of Parisian fresh air into the room. Paris, like Beijing and China, had not suffered significant damage during the past world wars, resulting in many ancient buildings over 200 years old. Yukai had already showered and was now strolling through the streets of Paris. There were so many tourists. He wore a light sweater and a black jacket. In Paris, Yukai didn't need a hat. Even if he walked up and down the Seine twice, he wouldn't likely be recognized. Even if he encountered Chinese tourists, they were few and far between. A 10-minute walk from Rue Scribe brought Yukai back to the Paris Opera. Free of the burden of luggage and baggage, he finally had the leisure to explore the Opera House. The front entrance of the Opera House was off limits, but it contained several beautiful sculptures. Looking at the introduction, Yukai realized they were sculptures of famous composers. There were 4 sculptures of figures, but Yukai had only heard of Haydn. On either side were 2 large sculpture groups, musical instruments, harmony, joy, and dance. Reaching the back door, Yukai prepared to buy a ticket. 12 euros, sir. Pulling euros from his wallet, Yukai checked his balance. He was running low, he'd have to exchange some at the bank after he got out. While WeChat Pay was accepted in many places in Paris, it was only in large shopping malls, not restaurants. If you wanted to satisfy your appetite with a good meal, 100 euros was too little in France. Entering the Paris Opera House through the back entrance, the first thing you saw was a circular, purple light source. Then, you could see sculptures tinted purple by the purple light. The Opera House was filled with sculptures, from the corridors, walls, and even the ceilings, all covered in exquisite detail. In some places, the ceilings were covered in large paintings. Entering the lobby from the corridor, the purple light disappeared. Instead, bright white lights adorned the countless candlesticks in the lobby. The placement of these candlesticks was meticulously calculated. They served more than just to illuminate visitors' sightlines. Most importantly, they illuminated the staircase leading from the lobby to the auditorium. This staircase is a highlight of the Opera House. Imagine the 19th century scene of noble ladies and young ladies strolling down these steps in graceful gowns. No need for red carpets or spotlights, this place was the ultimate catwalk. Every woman who walked these marble steps was a model of elegance, showcasing their attire to the fullest. The lobby's ceiling was also beautifully decorated with oil paintings. The vibrant colors created a striking visual impact against the golden red hue of the hall. 4 paintings, each located in 4 directions, told a different story. One depicted an angel descending a blue mist, with a flute-playing bird beneath it. This was Yukai's favorite, but he had no idea what play it was, given his limited knowledge of opera. I almost forgot. Yukai was about to ascend these stairs when he suddenly remembered he could still live stream. Even the smallest mosquito is still meat. Yukai's previous live stream had earned him several thousand yuan, enough to stay in a mid-range hotel in Paris for a week. He opened the live stream on his phone and flickered slightly. It was fairly clear. He'd heard that 6G networks were under development, perhaps enabling truly global connectivity someday. Right now, the network was still a bit patchy, causing some lag when further away from the server. "Can you see it?" Yukai asked. No one. After a few seconds, the netizens who had received the message gradually arrived. Yukai hadn't live streamed in over a month. If it weren't for the message from the website, these people would have almost forgotten he even existed. Brother Kai is awesome. He's on CCTV, the missing person has returned, but what the hell is live streaming in the middle of the night? He's traveling again. Yukai looked at the scattered comments and paused for a moment. So it's already midnight? No wonder there aren't so many people around. Also, please take good care of the live stream room. Please don't call me Brother Kai. Thank you. He slowly moved his phone around, letting them take in the scene. This is the Paris Opera. Have you seen the Phantom of the Opera? This is the place. I've just entered the lobby. I'm going to start a live stream to show you what it's like inside. After explaining, Yukai headed up the stairs to the second floor. Whether live streaming or taking photos, the best shots at the Opera House are always those aimed upwards. Because there are so many people. Paris? The host went to Paris again. I'm envious, just walked in. What is this place? Yukai said, I'll just explore it on my own. You guys come with me. If there's anything I know, I'll tell you. Don't worry if you're late. I'll edit some of the photos and put them on my Bilibili account when I get back tonight. Standing on the second floor, Yukai took a photo facing the stairs and continued, it's a little late today. I plan to get something to eat after touring the Opera House. Tomorrow I should go to the Louvre and Notre Dame. I saw on the map that these 2 attractions are relatively close to me. As he spoke, Yukai reached the auditorium of the Opera House. This is arguably the largest auditorium in Europe, capable of accommodating 2,000 people for a play. The interior is lavishly decorated, the ceiling, walls, railings, and pillars are all coated in gold. The seats are all red velvet. A foreign girl in front of me was explaining the story of this place to her friend, saying, when the golden light shines on the red velvet and reflects onto the girl's face, it makes her skin appear rosy and beautiful. Is this the romance of the French? Chapter 108. Chez Clement. At this time tomorrow, there would be a ballet performance on the stage in front. Yukai really wanted to see a ballet or musical here, but tickets were incredibly hard to come by. Perhaps Yukai himself couldn't quite articulate what he wanted to see, but he simply wanted to sit here and listen to an old musical, whether it was The Little Prince or Romeo and Juliet. He just wanted to experience what it was like to watch a performance from this very auditorium. Leaving the auditorium, he quickly made his way to the opera house's foyer. The foyer was the most visited area of the entire opera house, and its opulence rivaled the main lobby, influenced by architectural and pictorial concepts inherited from the Renaissance. Everything here spoke of the splendor of France during that era. Everything in the foyer was gilded, some decorations even entirely covered in gold. Compared to the Potala Palace in the snowy regions, the gold here might not be as abundant, but visually, it truly embodied the concept of opulence. Sunlight filtered through the glass, illuminating the golden objects. The continuous reflections from these golden artifacts illuminated the entire lounge. Walking here, you felt like you'd stepped into a fairy tale golden palace. Yukai didn't even bother to read the comments, his head tilted 45 degrees as he stared up at the ceiling. This allowed him to admire the beautiful paintings above, the stained glass windows, and the painstakingly carved figures, each one standing in a variety of poses atop tall golden pillars. Some gazed down at the crowd, their chins resting in thought, while others chatted with their companions, grinning and laughing as if cracking a joke. Their facial expressions were perfectly lifelike. Yukai actually wanted to look down to see if the floor was also made of gold, but the crush of people made him give up any thought and he simply followed the crowd out. It felt like climbing the Great Wall on National Day. Only after exiting did Yukai check his phone. It blinded my eyes. A sense of the Renaissance washed over him. Yukai smiled and said, "There are many more buildings like this in Paris. Let's go see them tomorrow. It seems it's getting late in China. I won't be broadcasting anymore. Go to bed. Stop live streaming." Okay, putting his phone away, Yukai headed towards the Place de l'Opéra, where many Western restaurants lined the landscape. He decided to try some authentic French cuisine tonight. If the Opera House and the Place de l'Opéra were like the spades in a deck of cards, then the Place de l'Opéra would be the point below the heart. There were many vehicles heading to other attractions. Walking along the center of the spades, crossing the Place de l'Opéra, you'll reach Rue de l'Opéra. At the end, you'll find another Parisian attraction, the Louvre. He definitely couldn't continue his sightseeing today, as it was already getting dark. Yukai exchanged 2,000 euros at the Banque de la Pupille before finding a restaurant called Chez Clement, located on the Boulevard des Capes Reims. It only took 20 minutes to get home after dinner. In fact, the restaurant Yukai chose was across from the hotel building where he was staying, a large triangular structure. The Mercure Paris Opera was on the left side of the triangle, but Yukai was looking at the lower side. Chez Clement, with 3 clear glass walls and one side against a wall, looked small, but once inside, you'd realize it wasn't against a wall, it simply extended from the restaurant itself. The restaurant's decor was warm and harmonious, with copper plates and spoons decorating the walls. The dining utensils were also traditional copper plates, creating a striking design. Yukai sat down closer to the inside and began ordering. Banana roll on toast, creme brulee, beef Wellington. There were so many dishes Yukai wanted to try, but he couldn't let food go to waste, so he didn't order much. He'd save the truffles and foie gras for another time. It didn't take long for Yukai to get his order. This was a popular tourist restaurant, so the waiters knew the preferences of Chinese tourists. After asking Yukai, they served the appetizer, main course, and dessert together. The beef Wellington was entirely wrapped in puff pastry. Unlike some restaurants that only serve the center 2 pieces for aesthetic reasons, this place served the whole steak. The portion was generous. The center of the beef remained tender. Yukai was quite picky about his beef. He didn't like it well done, as it would lose its flavor. But he also couldn't handle a steak cooked medium rare. The blood hidden in the muscle was squeezed out with one bite, like a vampire. And this beef Wellington was cooked just right. Cutting a little and chewing it, the flavors of mushrooms, mustard, and ham appeared one after another, and the texture and taste of the meat itself also joined in. It gave Yukai a great sense of satisfaction. Yukai specially ordered another bottle of white wine. People can't keep anything in this world, so enjoying life is the most important thing. Yukai was eating happily when he heard his phone ring. Looking at the caller ID, it was Rupert. "Hello, Rupert." "Ah, diable," Rupert exclaimed, and after confirming that it was Yukai's voice, he asked, "When did you learn French?" Yukai smiled proudly and said, "Why do you say that? Maybe I learned it a long time ago, who knows?" "Oh, this is incredible. I thought you didn't know it." Yukai could already imagine the scene of the opposite side smiling bitterly and shaking his head. He found it interesting and said, "I can also speak German and Irish. I am a language genius, but I just didn't tell anyone." Rupert said, "If I were your language teacher, I would be ashamed. By the way, when will you come to Paris? I'm going to Lyon in 2 days. If you go to France, I can come to meet you." "Don't be so polite," Yukai said politely in a Chinese tone. "And I'm already in Paris. I just visited the Paris Opera today and will go to Notre Dame tomorrow, so I'm sorry, you have to go to Lyon alone." "Dear Kai, you really gave me a surprise," Rupert said. "Since you are so fluent in French, I don't worry about your safety. Remember to call me when you go to Lyon. I wish you a good time in Paris." "I will," Yukai said. After hanging up the phone, he shook the wine glass slightly. The taste of white wine had a hint of fruitiness, and the sweet and sour feeling was like squeezing some lemon juice into it. The door of the restaurant was suddenly opened, and a cold wind came in, attracting Yukai to look at the door. 2 young girls came in. It turned out to be them. Yukai wiped his mouth with a tissue and shouted, "Waiter, check out." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109 Notre Dame. What's the most common store in Paris? Perfumeries? Luxury goods stores? French restaurants? None of them. France's most popular store is cafes, with diverse styles everywhere. The French have a real love for coffee. Yukai went out early this morning and had breakfast at the cafe downstairs. Yes, breakfast at the cafe. A cup of coffee, a loaf of baguette, and a small jar of raspberry jam, a spread you spread on the baguette, much like ketchup on French fries, enriching the bread's texture. The baguette is a true star of the bread world, with the French president even publicly expressing his support for its application for inclusion on the UNESCO representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. It doesn't taste anything special, actually. The recipe is simple, using only 4 basic ingredients: flour, water, salt, and yeast. Sugar, milk powder, and almost no oil or wheat flour are added. The baguette has a crusty crust, but that's just the crust. Tear it into strips and dip it in blueberry jam or butter for a refreshingly sweet treat, making it a staple of the French diet. French breakfasts are mostly sweet. Yukai wanted something noodle-y or savory, but couldn't find any place. Since he was already here, he decided to make the best of it, so he blended in with the Parisian atmosphere and enjoyed a French breakfast. He had woken up early to visit Notre Dame, so it wasn't until 9 o'clock that he finished his meal. There was a metro station just 200 meters from the cafe. In fact, within this tiny city of 105 square kilometers, there are over 300 metro stations, with entrances practically every 500 meters, making it convenient for everyone. 17 minutes later, Yukai got off at the Rue Notre Dame de Caloueter metro station. Upon exiting the metro, he saw a building shaped like the front half of a cruise ship. This was Notre Dame. It does look like a ship, Yukai muttered to himself, grabbing his camera to snap a picture of the elderly, yet still vibrant, woman. Notre Dame's original French name, Notre Dame, translates to Our Lady. This lady refers to the Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus. She is located on a small island in the Seine. The island is surrounded on all sides by the romantic Seine River, connected only by a few bridges. It's one of Paris' most famous attractions, and most languages can be heard in the square in front of Notre Dame. Walking toward the cathedral, Yukai heard Chinese, Japanese, English, German, and Korean. It wasn't peak tourist season in Paris yet. If he had come 2 months later, He might not have heard any specific language, just a swarm of mosquitoes buzzing around him. Putting aside the desecration of Notre Dame, and considering the building as half of a cruise ship, its forecourt is on the neatly cut side. Furthermore, the island on which Notre Dame stands is shaped like a ship. It's unclear if this influenced the architect. However, construction began in 1163, over 850 years ago. Perhaps the designer's ideas are beyond our modern ability to verify. From a distance in the forecourt, the twin towers appeared to have 4 levels. The bottom level featured 3 recessed reliefs. The second level was a clock-like structure with 3 sculpted figures standing on top, flanked by 2 windows. Above that, the twin towers, the 2 towers, gave rise to their name. An elderly man, leading a group of tourists, walked past Yukai, pointing at Notre Dame with an umbrella and saying, "Notre Dame's fame is known worldwide. Everyone on Earth has heard of it." He smiled. As a bewildered foreign tourist, it wasn't unreasonable to ask for a bit of explanation, right? Yukai approached the umbrella-carrying man to hear his explanation. But he smiled and nodded at Yukai, asking, "Hello, do you understand French?" Yukai pursed his lips and paused for a moment before saying, "Yes, I do. I just wanted to hear your explanation. Is that okay?" "Of course," he said. "But I'm not a professional tour guide, so please forgive me if my explanation isn't good." His expression was proud, as if to say, "No one here knows Notre Dame better than I do," so he was a volunteer tour guide. Yukai nodded at him and followed the group of tourists he was leading toward one of the 3 reliefs in the front courtyard. "Look at this building," he said. "It's the most famous building in the world. It's incredibly majestic, yet also perfectly balanced. If you look at the geometry of the tower, you'll see vertical lines, horizontal lines, squares, circles, basically, every kind of geometric shape." Approaching the recessed relief, Yukai saw hundreds of human figures carved into it. Some were winged angels looking down, while others gazed up at Jesus. Besides the humans, there were many strange creatures, likely demons from Western mythology. He explained, "Look at the dichotomy here, between good and evil. Next to Christ, we see the chosen ones, each wearing a crown. They have fulfilled their destiny and achieved redemption. And on the other side are the sinners, whipped into tormenting hell, sent to face judgment." Yukai left the tour group. The explanation was excellent, but too subjective. It was better to hire another guide. The main part of Notre Dame Cathedral is accessible without a ticket. Tickets are only required for the bell tower and crypt. The bell tower is where Quasimodo, the bell ringer in the novel The Hunchback of Notre Dame, rings the bell. This novel teaches the truth that beautiful girls only like handsome boys. Even if Quasimodo loved Esmeralda, his love was unrequited. So realistic. Hats are mandatory upon entering the cathedral. Once inside, the distant sound of a choir singing hymns echoes through this 100-meter-long, 33-meter-high building. Even those who don't understand the meaning of the songs will find them beautiful, or perhaps the choir's voice is beautiful. Walking through the cathedral can be disorienting, overwhelming, and overwhelming. The beautiful stained glass shimmers in the sunlight, and the walls are covered in ancient paintings, truly works of art. Yukai walked towards the choir, admiring the ancient architecture as he passed. He doesn't understand the significance of this place, just as Westerners don't understand the significance of ancient Chinese architecture. However, the profound sense of history that has been etched in Notre Dame is palpable to everyone who enters it. It would be wonderful if the old summer palace were still around. If Notre Dame de Paris is the most famous building in the West, then in China, the old summer palace is surely a symbol of Eastern architecture. Any recommendations left? Give me a few. Chapter 110 Two Worlds. The walls depicted the story of Jesus' resurrection. It was unclear whether the material was metal or wood. The statues were colorful, but with age, their bright colors had faded to darker tones. Religious architecture is always built with exceptional solemnity, as is the case with the Potala Palace and Notre Dame Cathedral. "Excuse me, are you looking at these sculptures?" a priest asked Yukai, holding some pamphlets. He had a high, graying hairline and wore gold-rimmed glasses. He smiled, possessing a strangely approachable air. "Yes. God, your French is excellent. What country are you from? China, or an island nation?" "South Korea." "China. China." He asked in Chinese. "China is great, I like it very much. I once lived in Yanjing for a while, near Hongju Street." "What's your name?" "Yikai, Yukai said. Like many foreigners, the priest liked to gesture with his hands when he spoke, adjusting his tone of voice. Yukai, this is for you, he said, holding out a pamphlet. This describes the history of some of the artwork in Notre Dame. I think you'll need it, but please return it to us before you leave. Yukai, needing it, thanked him. Thank you, Father. You're welcome. There's a special celebration happening in the church later. I hope you won't leave so soon. I'll wait and see, Yukai replied. Leaving the priest, Yukai continued his leisurely stroll. With a brochure, understanding the religious artifacts was much easier. The brochure was in Chinese, which was why the priest had asked about their nationality. After Yukai finished viewing the artwork along the way, he arrived at the choir. A wooden fence stood beneath the stage where the choir performed. There were about 20 children on stage, the oldest only 14 or 15, the youngest only about 10. The choir was conducted by an Indian man, who spoke fluent French, suggesting he had lived in France for many years or was born there. Yukai had never heard hymns before. They were unlike any other musical form. The complex, multi-part singing, combined with the sculptures and angels on the surrounding buildings, gave them an extraordinary sacredness. Some of the tourists were filming with their phones or cameras, while others were devout believers, clasping their hands in prayer and silently reciting passages from the Bible. Yukai lingered for a long time, hoping to witness the ceremony the priest had announced. Around 10:30, tourists began to gather. Perhaps they didn't know why, but seeing so many people doing so, they wanted to see what was going on. Yukai followed suit. Seeing the crowd gather, he knew the priest's celebration had begun. A man in a suit rang a bell 3 times. Then, a group of missionaries slowly emerged from the ramp, their leader swinging a censer from side to side, like a pocket watch during a hypnotic spell. The censer was about the size of 2 fists, with a 1-meter-long chain. Smoke filled the air, emitting a captivating fragrance quite different from Chinese sandalwood. He was followed by 3 missionaries walking side by side. The one in the middle held an exquisite cross, and the others on either side held long white candles. Behind them were 5 missionaries in black robes. Yukai wasn't sure why they wore black robes. They should have been white, right? Seeing them reminded him of a zombie movie by Uncle Jiu, where a vampire wore black robes. They made their way through the crowd to the choir and pulled a crown from a chest. All the churchgoers bowed their heads in prayer, while only the tourists were still enthusiastically photographing. Yukai wondered if he had forgotten something. This crown was likely a sacred Christian relic, which was why these churchgoers were treating it with such solemnity. The missionary holding the crown carefully placed it on a wooden board. Atop the board sat a large, exquisitely shaped chalice, gilded throughout. The 4 missionaries lifted the board steadily and placed it on their shoulders. The bell rang 3 more times. The man holding the censer continued to walk in front, followed by those holding candles and those carrying wooden boards. They walked around the tourists and stopped at the pulpit of the church. The believers began to line up, holding their breath, and walked forward to kiss the crown. The missionaries held silk scarves and wiped the crown after the believers kissed it. Most tourists would not miss this rare experience and stepped forward to kiss the crown. Yukai was thinking, if this thing could be sold, how much would it sell for? It would probably be more than a villa. His system was obsessed with domestic religions. If domestic religions also took out holy objects for him to touch, perhaps he could gain 1 or 2 more skills. When the sun could shine down from directly above, it was time for lunch. Yukai walked out of Notre Dame de Paris and walked slowly towards the Pont Neuf, feeling the warmth of the sun all the way. When he went down the stairs, Yukai saw a familiar figure. Yukai met the girl he met twice yesterday. She was wearing a black jacket and jeans, her dark hair tied in a ponytail. She sat quietly on the steps, reading a book. Yukai glanced at her as he passed by. It looked like Proust's In Search of Lost Time. This staircase led from Notre Dame Cathedral to the Pont Neuf. It was bustling with pedestrians, but the outside world's clamor didn't penetrate her tranquil world at all. This tiny staircase, however, was divided into 2 worlds. He pressed the shutter button unconsciously. The girl, as if sensing she was being photographed, looked up and frowned at Yukai. Yukai quickly apologized, saying, "I'm sorry." He stepped forward, leaning closer to her. "I'm sorry to take this photo without your permission, but my heart tells me that if I didn't press the shutter at that moment, I would regret it for a long time. So?" Yukai shrugged. "I'll give it to you when I finish the photo. I think you'll like it." Yukai's photography skills had been improved twice by the system. He didn't know the exact level, but he believed that each photo he took held a unique beauty. He no longer cared about participating in photography competitions. The accolades his photography brought him weren't important. What mattered most was the memories each photo left for Yukai. Hearing Yukai's explanation, the girl relaxed her brow and said, "It's okay." Yukai had seen them at the opera house yesterday, where a girl familiar with the area was introducing her to the style and history of the opera house. They'd also met in a restaurant that evening. This was their third encounter. Chapter 111 New Bridge. She'd been reading a lot lately, and this one, Remembrance of Things Past, was one of Yukai's favorites. It contained many beautiful lines, like, "When someone can't possess something, the only thing they can do is not forget it." Or, "Anything blossoms when you yearn for it. Once you possess it, it withers." "Have you read this book too?" she asked. "Just finished it." Yukai was looking through a photo he'd taken earlier and asked, "Do you want to delete the previous one?" She shook her hair, revealing her fair skin, and said, "You'll keep it, but you must give me this one." Someone shouted, "Ouch!" Soon, another girl came over. She was wearing an orange windbreaker and sunglasses, looking very fashionable, but her words were blunt. "I just left, and a handsome guy is hitting on you?" "Handsome guy? Let me remind you, our fair is getting married. You don't stand a chance." The girl with the ponytail bumped into her friend and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? I didn't mean it like you said." "Who knows?" she muttered. Yukai smiled and introduced himself. "Hello, my name is Sean. I saw you at the opera house yesterday." The girl in the trench coat interrupted, "So you're here to chat?" "Ignore her. Call me Fair. Her name is Ina." Yukai nodded and said, "Then let's add each other as friends. I'll send you the photos when they're ready." Faye readily exchanged Facebook accounts with Yukai. Ina was also interested and added Yukai as a friend, but Yukai's Facebook account was empty, just a chat app he used to chat with his foreign friends. "Then I'll be leaving first," Yukai said. "Wait." Ina stopped Yukai and suggested, "Are you going to dinner too? How about we go together, Fair?" "Yes, Mr. Sean, how about that?" Yukai thought for a moment and decided he needed to treat her. His candid photoshoot just now was rude, and Fair hadn't bothered to complain. But if he had told her beforehand, perhaps that kind of mood wouldn't have happened again. He wondered how other photographers handled such situations. Was he just going to take the photos and then run away? "Okay," Yukai agreed, asking, "So where are we going?" "Come with me," Ina said with a smile. Yukai felt Ina's personality was somewhat similar to Saoirse's, but only slightly. Saoirse was much quieter than Ina, and aside from her feminine dress, Ina had a rather boyish personality. At the end of the Isle de Cité lies a famous Parisian bridge called the Pont Neuf. Built in 1606, despite its name, it is the oldest bridge in Paris. Many ancient bridges across the Seine have collapsed, but the Pont Neuf still stands tall not because of its strength but because it lacks railings. Indeed, it is precisely because of its lack of railings that it has survived to this day. Legend has it that lovers who tie a love lock engraved with their names in a spiritual place will be able to connect with each other and remain in love forever. And what place could be more spiritual than the Seine? Consequently, many lovers place love locks on the Pont Neuf, hoping to seal their love for a lifetime. Hoping their love would last forever, they use these love locks to bear witness to their most loyal and sincere love. However, due to the excessive number of locks, the bridge collapsed. Ina planned to walk across the Pont Neuf with Faye and then have dinner on the other side. As they approached the Pont Neuf, they could see a bronze statue of an ancient knight standing in the space between the two independent arches. Ina explained, "This statue, known as the Bronze Horseman, is actually based on Henry IV. However, the original was melted down during the Revolution, and the statue is a replica from 1818. Walking along the bridge, the sidewalks on either side were lined with semicircular stone benches, where street artists set up stalls. Some painted portraits, while others captured the beautiful scenery along the Seine. As they exited the Pont Neuf, Yukai spotted a sign. "Locks prohibited on the Pont Neuf, our bridge cannot bear the weight of your love." After Yukai had finished taking photos, Ina pointed to a restaurant on the street and said, "Let's eat here." It was clearly a Western restaurant. The sign outside reads Kobun. There is an 80-centimeter high marble on the side facing the street. When customers sit by the window, they can see the new bridge through the glass, but the marble blocks their view from the waist down. Even in broad daylight, the restaurant is lit with yellow light, creating a warm atmosphere. The three of them sat at a long table, and the waiter came forward and asked, "Good afternoon, what would you like to order?" "Sandwiches, croissants, and espresso," Anna said immediately, having probably gone over the menu many times in her mind. Fair said, "Steak pancakes, onion soup, and a latte." Yukai flipped through the menu, page after page, and then said, "Ham sandwich, Irish roast lamb rice, espresso, and onion soup." Yukai was afraid he would starve to death after ordering so little. After the order was taken, the waiter brought some olives and biscuits to the table, and soon, steaming hot coffee was served. The women here all had perfect figures. They'd have a cup of coffee or wine before their main course, followed by some fruit and biscuits. By the time their food arrived, they were already half full. Yukai had never had a roast lamb meal in Ireland. He only knew of Irish lamb stew, but he had no idea what it was. Irish lamb stew was essentially lamb chunks stewed with potatoes. After waiting for half an hour, the waiter brought Yukai's Irish roast lamb meal. It consisted of roasted lamb chops and potatoes, served directly over a small bowl of rice. Were Irish potatoes so famous that they'd even reached France? Even potatoes could be added? But the rice was too small. The Irish roast lamb meal was essentially just lamb chops. The ham sandwich was bread cut into 2 slices, with slices of ham, pickles, and a little onion in the middle. The good news was that there was plenty of it, and with a bowl of onion soup, Yukai was quite full. The bill, including a €10 tip, came to only €73, a bargain compared to the steak he had yesterday. "How about we split it here?" Yukai asked. Anna asked, "Why? Aren't you here for tourism?" Yes. "Then let's go together. We're going to the Louvre this afternoon. If you have the same itinerary as us, you're going to the Louvre too, right?" Then, Anna looked at Fair, asking for her opinion. "Why are you looking at me after you've already said what you want to say?" Fair was speechless, shrugging to indicate she had no objection. It seemed safer to have a boy with her, assuming he didn't have any ulterior motives. Chapter 112 Paris Night. Anna knew Paris intimately, like a seasoned tour guide, knowing anecdotes about every corner of the world and even recounting the stories of individual objects. She claimed to be unemployed. However, her attire revealed she wasn't short of money. Yukai didn't know much about luxury goods, but the materials and design alone told him they weren't cheap. Fair, a Swiss woman, was getting married after returning from this trip. Yukai was surprised that she hadn't traveled with her boyfriend, but had come alone to find Anna, who lived in Paris. Anna took Yukai and Fair to the Louvre. The most famous artifacts there were the Venus de Milo, the Winged Victory of Samothrace, and the Mona Lisa. Due to the age of the sculptures, many details were lost, but imagination still allowed one to evoke their beauty from centuries past. The Mona Lisa wasn't about beauty, but rather the artist's remarkable ability to capture the qualities of a bourgeois woman of her time. Her eyes were gentle, and her graceful posture embodied a woman's elegance and serenity. There are many schools of modern oil painting. Yukai personally prefers classical oil painting and Impressionism. As for the Louvre's many abstract and futuristic works, Yukai isn't very familiar with them. After wandering around most of the Louvre, Yukai only saw a handful of Chinese artifacts. According to the descriptions, they were all acquired through exchange with the Qing dynasty and were perfectly normal exhibits. He heard that many were collected and not on public display. As they were leaving the Louvre, Anna smiled and said to Yukai, "The Louvre is now occupied by you Chinese." She was referring to the wedding photos taken outside the Louvre. Near the Louvre's auditorium, 4 or 5 couples were taking wedding photos. The women were all young, beautiful, and beaming. Yukai smiled helplessly. "Isn't this the culture you brought to China? Why don't you take many photos yourself?" Many studios in China have the word Paris in their names, Paris Bride or Paris Wedding Dress, but in reality, foreigners rarely take wedding photos. After the popularity of wedding photography in Asia, it has gradually spread to many surrounding countries in recent years. Couples in Western Asia and Eastern Europe have also started taking wedding photos. "Why do you want to take them?" Anna said nonchalantly. "Don't you think it's a waste of money? And the wedding dress can only be worn on the wedding day, right, Fair?" "Yes," Fair explained tersely to Yukai. "Actually, in our country, you can't wear a wedding dress before the wedding. There's a saying that if a man sees his fiancée's wedding dress before the wedding, It will bring misfortune to the marriage. Anna nodded in agreement. Yes, my mother and I chose my wedding dress when I got married. Are you married? Yukai suddenly asked. Anna brushed her hair away from her ear and asked, is there anything wrong with that? Yukai shrugged and didn't respond. He simply thought Anna was a little young, like a recent graduate. With the guidance of a local, their trip to Paris went smoothly. Anna pointed out interesting places and delicious food, and they visited several attractions in just one afternoon. After visiting the Eiffel Tower, they took the subway back to the opera station. Before leaving, Anna pulled a ticket from her white handbag and said to Yukai, I heard you want to see a ballet at the opera. This ticket is for you. What? Yukai exclaimed in surprise. Not only Yukai, but even Fair stared at Anna in surprise. Anna pinched the ticket between two fingers and swung it, making a rustling sound. I go to the opera often, so I don't have any special feelings about watching dance there, but it's nice for you to experience it once. She handed it to Yukai and said, here, since you're treating us to lunch. Yukai didn't take it, wondering if that wasn't a good idea. Here. Anna shoved the ticket into Yukai's hand and, pulling Fair away, left. Hey. Yukai called out, holding the ticket, but Anna ignored him and simply waved at him from a distance. Fair said to Anna, we only have 2 tickets. What will you do if you give them to him? He wants to go more than I do, Anna said. But. Don't say buts. You're getting married when you get back. What are you doing this time? Anna put her right arm around Fair's shoulders and said, to relax and have fun. This is your vacation. Anna continued, you have too few friends. That's not good. Don't worry, I'll find another ticket for myself. In the distance, Yukai stared at the tickets. Trading lunch for an opera ticket didn't seem like a bad deal. Back at the hotel, Yukai ate at the restaurant downstairs and looked up the location of Paris's Chinatown online. Paris is a multicultural melting pot, and people from many countries flock here for warmth. For example, there are the Jewish Quarter and the Indian Quarter, though of course, the names shouldn't be called that, like the Rue Rose in the Jewish Quarter. There are also many Japanese-owned restaurants near Yukai's second arrondissement. He wanted to find out where the Chinatown was. He couldn't eat Western food every day for the next 2 days, and he missed the taste of home. The 13th arrondissement. Little Paris is different from many modern cities. Its neon lights at night are far less bright than those of Hong Kong Island and Tokyo, always shimmering with a hazy, warm glow. If you're going to visit Paris at night, Yukai highly recommends the Louvre and the Eiffel Tower. However, he advises against going out at night in many places. Following the yellow streetlights, they made their way towards the opera house. Before leaving, Yukai had contacted Fair, and they agreed to meet in the square in front of the opera house. How can you quickly spot someone in a crowd? Of course, it's by their temperament. Yukai quickly found Fair, approached her, and greeted her, good evening. Well, let's go in first. The opera house was devoid of daytime tourists. Only audience members were walking up the beautiful marble steps, as if they were heading to a ballroom for a high-end ball. The strategically placed lighting illuminated the entire opera house, leaving no blind spots. Seated in the auditorium, Yukai and Fair quietly watched the ballet. Ballet didn't feature soaring vocals or swan dances on tiptoe, hand in hand. Instead, to Yukai's surprise, the story unfolded in a remarkably slow tempo, showcasing the dancers' supple bodies. Ballet isn't a rhythmic dance like jazz, it uses the body to express emotions, to portray a role through dance. No wonder it's called a ballet. Yukai and Fair hadn't actually chatted much. After the performance, they smiled at each other. Often, knowing someone well doesn't require many words. As they emerged from the opera house, Fair handed Yukai a card. Yukai put it away and asked, do you need me to take you home? No, Anna will be here soon. It was a quick thought. With that, Anna appeared before them, smiling. How was it? What did you talk about? Fair blushed, feeling Anna was beyond help. She gently took her hand and said, let's go. Yukai watched them get into a car before turning back and slowly walking towards the hotel. A Parisian night. A cold, romantic, free, and unrestrained night. Thanks for your feedback. I'll revise the plot. There are very few travel articles, and they are not traditionally written, so writing them is a bit of a hassle. Chapter 113 Arrival in Lion City. Having missed his Livestream viewers' day, Yukai then took them on a tour of Paris. Over the course of several days, he livestreamed a tour of Parisian attractions. Compared to domestic tourist attractions, Paris boasted significantly more foreigners. Yukai was referring to tourists from other countries, in addition to French nationals, with a significant proportion coming from China. Meanwhile, the number of foreign visitors to Chinese tourist attractions has been declining, and even Chinese are increasingly preferring to travel abroad. Given the right time, many people prioritize neighboring countries like Thailand and India over domestic destinations like Bali and Zhejiang. Yukai felt that many Chinese tourist attractions had become heavily commercialized, becoming more like shopping malls than tourist attractions. Without further regulation, ticket sales would likely decline significantly in the coming years. After a few days in Paris, Yukai remembered his purpose for visiting France, so he left before the food festival began and headed south to Lyon to attend the local food festival. As soon as he got out of the car, Yukai spotted Rupert waiting by the roadside. Tall and lanky, with a neatly trimmed mustache, he looked energetic. "Hi. Kai, you're finally here." Of course. Yukai got out of the car and shook Rupert's hand, giving it a vigorous shake. "I told you I'd come," he said. Rupert was enthusiastic and helped Yukai load his luggage into his car. The French are a nation with a strong sense of pride. Perhaps it's because their fashion, cuisine, and art are among the best in the world. Under this influence, they believe that everything in the world is best in France. Therefore, knowing a few words of French is bound to increase the French's enthusiasm when interacting with them. Lyon is France's second largest metropolitan area. It was already quite prosperous during Roman times and is one of the country's most important cities after Paris. Rupert drove to a Western restaurant and said, "This is a restaurant owned by a friend of mine. It has 1 Michelin star." There are approximately 600 Michelin-starred restaurants in France, with over 500 of them having 1 star, and the rest having 2 and 3 stars. Even so, in such a vast country, 1-star Michelin restaurants are rare. Michelin originally sold tires, but their leaders had the foresight to see the modern automobile travel industry, commonly known in China as self-driving tours. They believed that the more prosperous automobile travel became, the better their tire sales would be. Therefore, they created a restaurant guide to encourage self-driving tours. Self-driving tours would undoubtedly wear out tires, which would definitely benefit their sales. A genius for logic. Well, that was Yukai's own speculation. He had no idea why a restaurant guide was created. The place Rupert had taken him to was in the middle of a city street. The houses in Little Paris were generally low, perhaps to highlight the Eiffel Tower, while in the cities outside, tall buildings were common. So, this place was not much different from the metropolitan areas of Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, except that the shop names were in French. The black sign read Bryant in distorted English, presumably meaning Bryant's restaurant. The restaurant's lighting remained in the warm, Western-style style. In the center, there was an enclosed area, approximately 10 square meters, filled with exquisite chandeliers. Besides being decorative, this chandelier also enhanced the restaurant's atmosphere. Surrounding this area and along the walls were numerous rectangular tables, neatly laid out on clean tablecloths and equipped with Western-style cutlery. Perhaps it was past mealtime, so the place was empty, with only 2 tables still enjoying their lunch. Waiters, bored, leaned against the cash register with menus in hand, or tidied the tables with dishcloths. They all knew Rupert and greeted him with a smile. Rupert nodded and called out to the kitchen, "Chef Ente, Chef Ente." Then a portly man emerged. He weighed over 200 pounds and wore a chef's uniform, but no hat. The fat on his face squeezed his eyes, reducing them to slits. He held a can in his hand. "Hello, are you the guy that Rupert always refers to? My name is Brian Ente, just call me Ente." Yukai extended his hand and shook it, saying, "Hello, call me Sean." "Sure, Sean." Yukai expected Ente's hands to be a little greasy due to the polite handshake, but they were surprisingly clean, without the fumes that chefs often encounter. Rupert pulled out a chair and said, "Please sit down for a moment. I have a dish I'd like you to try." Ente replied, "Rupert, you're flattering me. Haha. Come try my cooking too." "Thank you." Yukai readily took the seat he had offered. In Europe and America, you don't need to be overly polite. Unlike in Asia, they don't have the custom of mutual courtesy. Generally, inviting you to a banquet means you're truly invited. 2 chefs entered the kitchen, apparently to prepare lunch for Yukai. Although he had known about the tasting and it was the main reason he'd come to France, Yukai was still a little excited. Michelin-starred chefs were preparing food just for him. Just thinking about it makes me excited, doesn't it? In the kitchen, Rupert had already begun preparing. He felt that if he could conquer this Chinese palate, he would surely conquer the taste buds of all Chinese people. Poor Frenchman, he didn't realize that even Chinese people in the same city have different tastes. Moreover, China is divided into northern and southern ingredients, with 8 major cuisines. Entei was also preparing his signature dish. Unlike Rupert, Entei believed that no matter how good Chinese food was, it could never compare to French cuisine. He had given Yukai a free meal purely out of respect for Rupert and because he had believed his boasts about Yukai. Being able to taste the preparation process of a dish from its finished product was beyond magical. If he could truly achieve this, then Sean might be even more impressive than Ralph Ford. Ralph Ford was one of the most renowned food critics in the West, his reviews a crucial factor in restaurants earning 3 Michelin stars. Rupert was mincing onions and carrots on his utensil. The food that Entei had prepared was already ready when Rupert went to the station to greet Yukai. He checked the thermometer, removed the needle from the ingredients, and began to plate the food with cheese, truffles, and celery, before finally placing the main course on the plate. Chapter 114, Slow-Cooked Truffle Chicken Breast. Yukai waited for a few minutes before seeing Entei emerge with a plate. Despite his portly figure, for a Frenchman, Entei still carried himself with impressive grace. He confidently placed the dish in front of Yukai and said, "This is our popular dish, slow-cooked truffle chicken breast. Enjoy." Entei immediately showcased his signature dish. Ever since his friends visited China, he'd been studying Chinese cuisine daily, hoping to blend the two cuisines for new recipe inspiration and attract more Chinese tourists. Entei was quite critical of this. A true believer in French cuisine, he'd gone so far as to use truffles, one of Western cuisine's most prized ingredients, to wow Chinese gourmets. Is that truffle? Seeing it for the first time, Yukai didn't pretend to know. In the center of the plate sat a beautiful chicken breast. If Entei hadn't pointed it out, Yukai would have mistaken it for a large, tender ham. Could it be ham made from minced chicken breast? Whether or not French cuisine is delicious, its presentation is always exquisite. French chefs spend a great deal of time researching how to make their ingredients more artistic. The cheese was squeezed into the corners of the plate, 8 small portions in total, interspersed with celery and truffles cut into rounds. Entei resisted the urge to introduce the dish to Yukai and instead began explaining truffles, from their origins to harvesting, then discussing their value, their nutritional value, and so on. This wasn't bragging, it was just part of everyday French life. Chatterboxing. The skin of the chicken breast had been cooked to a paper-thin layer, and beneath it lay the truffle, which had been cooked to liquid consistency, resembling a layer of chocolate sauce and exuding a strange aroma. With a gentle pull of the knife, Yukai cut off a piece of the meat. It looked tender just by looking at it. Yukai took a bite, and the truffle flavor was the first to hit, followed by the fluffy texture of the chicken, not at all dry. Perhaps this was due to the low temperature used to cook the chicken breast. How was it? Entei asked proudly. In fact, the strong flavor of the truffle left Yukai a little confused. It was like a seasoning infused with countless flavors: musk, garlic, fennel, even the damp, rotting smell of a forest. It felt a little strange at first, but once you got used to it, it felt like eating durian. This thing was quite delicious. They say truffles are the Hamlet of the culinary world, with 1,000 flavors for 1,000 people. Excellent. I've never had chicken prepared like this. But the truffle flavor was too pungent for Yukai, and he didn't quite like it. A while later, Rupert's dish arrived, a pasta dish. Spaghetti bolognese, Rupert said with a smile. I spent a lot of time thinking about the bolognese sauce. The dish resembled Chinese fried noodles, with a thick sauce covering the steaming hot pasta. French chefs love to create sauces, so many of their dishes have them. But Yukai struggled to find the Chinese flavor in this dish. The sauce is fantastic, the refreshing flavor is irresistible. Rupert, I think you nailed it. Rupert laughed heartily and asked, can you guess what I used to make the meat sauce this time? And also wanted to hear if this Chinese man could truly deduce the cooking process based on the ingredients. After all, such a tongue would always be the envy of chefs, whether Eastern or Western. Yukai took another bite of the pasta and said, the pasta is simple. The meat sauce must have onions and carrots, right? Sauté them, mince them, then add garlic and minced meat. Then there's red wine, tomato sauce, milk. The meat is beef, right? It's great for steak, but minced meat sauce doesn't have that same flavor. Rupert sighed, a little frustrated. He had deliberately used a ton of ingredients to create this meat sauce, both to ensure flavor and to challenge Ye Kai once again. Last time in China, he'd been badly defeated. But now, after using so much seasoning, Ye Kai still discerned every flavor, perfectly. Entei applauded Ye Kai with an exaggerated expression. Hearing about him was one thing, seeing him in person was another. He was convinced of Ye Kai's abilities. He could definitely become a top food critic. Ye Kai couldn't cook, but he was a competent talker. There was no need to say much when chatting with the French. They would chat for ages. Once they started, the conversation wouldn't stop. Ye Kai, a talker who couldn't cook, spent a whole day discussing food with a Michelin-starred chef, even inspiring Rupert with some new culinary ideas. In China, no one would engage in such a long discussion with him. Time flew by, and the next day arrived quickly. Rupert had to revamp his menu in preparation for the upcoming food competition. Entei wanted to run his own restaurant, so Ye Kai was attending the food festival alone. His father was pressing him, so he couldn't wait to see Rupert and the others compete. The food festival was held in a park in Lyon. Countless white tents were set up in a vast lawn, with strings stretched parallel to the tops, densely packed with colorful flags. Festivals and songs always go hand in hand. A blonde boy was singing a lyrical song on a microphone. People were coming and going, but thanks to the ample open space in the middle, it didn't seem overly crowded. It wasn't just French cuisine here, but also Chinese and Japanese cuisine. Ye Kai even saw shop names written in Malaysian. A Japanese food stall was performing a tuna butchering show, drawing gasps from the crowd. The expert knife skills made the Europeans think the chefs were kung fu masters. Nearby, people were queuing to try Japanese steak, which was free, but since it was so crowded, Ye Kai decided not to join in the fun, deciding to savor it later when he visited the island nation. Sumimasen, come see me. Most shops operated on their own, waiting for customers to come, but some hired help. A group of Japanese girls in red clothes and baseball caps danced and waved flyers. Smith Marseilles, look here, oyster bombs, only €10. The Japanese really know how to do business. Ye Kai was half coaxed into their store by the girls. Looking at the various dishes on the menu, Ye Kai's fingers moved. Well, today's food journey starts here. From morning to after the food festival, Ye Kai waited until it was getting dark before returning to his hotel. He ate all day and didn't know if he would gain weight. Hard to say. P.S. I just wanted to give it a try. The French section is a pure travelogue. But the attempt failed. I can't handle such a dull plot. Many people don't watch it. I'll come back and revise it if I have time in the future. Chapter 115 Don't Stay Home. Entei was a fine cook, but he was even more of a chatty Frenchman. Within a few days, Ye Kai's remarkable abilities spread to the chefs participating in the food festival. Starting the day after returning from the festival, a steady stream of people began visiting Ye Kai. Some invited him to taste their food, while others exchanged contact information, hoping to visit their restaurants in the future. Ye Kai was baffled. Could it be that they were worried about not having enough to eat their food? They were all master chefs, after all. But he had to leave France now. Somehow, Ye Zhuqiang had gotten wind of his liver stream in Paris a few days ago and called to inquire about the situation. Owing to inquiries, Ye Kai was certain his father was pushing him. Come to think of it, King Niu had already begun selling in some places in Sweep City. It was outrageous that there was no promotion. And Ye Kai, who had taken the initiative to manage the promotion, was still traveling in France? Well, better get out early to finish the work and enjoy the beach while he was there. The weather was beautiful that morning. After saying goodbye to Rupert, Ye Kai got in a taxi. To the airport, Ye Kai told the driver. Okay, the driver replied, then added, did you know about this restaurant chef participating in a cooking competition hosted by the Gourmet Association in a few days? What do you think of them? He was probably referring to Entei. Very good, Ye Kai replied instinctively. He was busy looking for Dining's number in the phone book. He had to call him first. Seeing Ye Kai remain silent, the driver continued to search for a topic. I heard that restaurants with good cooking skills might be upgraded to 2 Michelin stars. Driver, let me make a call first. As soon as he finished speaking, the call was connected. Ye Kai picked up the phone and said, Dinan. Hey, Kai? What made you think of calling me today? Are you coming to Australia? Their previous exchanges had been conducted on Facebook, but this was their first direct phone call since leaving Saipan. Dinan's question was prompted by Ye Kai's constant mention of his trip to Australia. Yes, of course. I'm coming to Australia, brother. Do you have time now? Of course. I'll definitely show you around our country. There's a saying in China. Dinan suddenly spoke in broken Chinese, Dizuzai. Hearing the idiom so distorted that it looked completely different, Ye Kai burst into laughter. That's great. Do you remember what you said back in Saipan about what you'd do when I got there? What? Dinan asked, reminiscing for a moment. Teach you to surf. Yes, I'm on my way to the airport right now. Dinan exclaimed in surprise, then added, then I'll start preparing food now. I'm going to have a party when you get there. After agreeing on a meeting place, Ye Kai hung up. Looking out the window at the city streets receding, Ye Kai felt a sense of wanting more. France, the beach, there was still so much he hadn't seen. This definitely wouldn't be just this one trip. The driver suddenly said, Hey, young man, are you Chinese or from Taiwan? Of course Chinese, Ye Kai said, looking up at the driver. The driver was a bit older, looking around 60 or 70, wearing glasses and staring intently ahead. Older people like this can sometimes drive slowly, but it's actually safer. But he also had a common French trait, he loved to chat, in flight. Mention Australia, and people inevitably think of kangaroos and koalas, or the frequent videos of venomous snakes, spiders, and other small critters entering houses. But Australia is actually a highly developed country, with half of the population living in the two major cities of Iceland and Melbourne. Life there is much better than what you see in videos. After getting off the plane, the idiotic system taught Ye Kai English again. Ye Kai had already guessed that this artificial idiot could only teach him the official language of a sovereign state. After retrieving his suitcase, Ye Kai walked out of the Australian airport. Every city had a particularly sentimental airport reception. Besides the travelers returning home to hug their parents, two couples also left Ye Kai feeling deeply moved. Watching them hug each other, he shook his head and sighed. Saoirse had been accepted into university, and now, except for university holidays, it was up to Ye Kai to take the initiative to visit her in Ireland. Hey, Kai? Dinan waved the cardboard vigorously. Ye Kai walked over and said, Please, don't call me Kai, call me Sean. Sean? Why not Kane? Yes, Kane sounds better. The two suddenly burst into laughter and hugged each other. After letting go, Dinan patted Ye Kai's arm and said happily, Let's go. My home isn't here. We need to take a plane. Australia is a federal country divided into 6 states. Dinan's home is in Tasmania, the only island state in the Australian Federation, and it can only be reached by plane from within Australia. Dinan, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped and asked, One more question. Do you have any fruit in your bag? Of course not. What's wrong? Ye Kai said. That's good. You can't bring fruit or fish on a plane. If you do, you'll be fined. What a strange rule. He had just stepped off the plane when he unexpectedly turned around and was about to continue flying. However, this time the flight was short and low, and looking out the window revealed a vast expanse of azure ocean. Ye Kai particularly loved scenery like the ocean, rivers, and lakes. No matter how many times he had seen them, standing by the sea or a river always brought him a sense of peace and tranquility. It was as if all his worries had drifted away with the current. The anxiety of a long flight dissipated the moment he saw the ocean. A smile crossed Ye Kai's lips, and he pulled out his phone to edit a new Weibo post. I'm in Australia, just got off the plane. Straight from cold France to Australia. It's the perfect blend of summer and autumn here, the weather's beautiful. Don't stay home, come on, I'll be waiting for you in Australia. As for my destination, I won't tell you. After editing the text, Ye Kai pressed the camera button and pointed it at himself. Dinan, sitting next to him, saw Ye Kai taking a selfie and tilted his head to grab the shot. The angle Ye Kai had been searching for so long was ruined by Dinan's blonde hair on the right side of the photo. Beauty turned to humor. Ye Kai smiled and said, Let's just post it. These two sentences, coupled with Ye Kai's refreshing outfit and happy expression, gave this Weibo post an air of freedom and ease. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116. Want to meet tomorrow? To pick up Yukai, Dinan parked his car in the parking lot at Tasmania Airport. After retrieving the car, he drove along the wide road for an hour before finally arriving at his destination. It was Dinan's home. We're here. This is my home. Dinan got out of the car, pushed open a metal gate, and drove inside. It was a small Western-style building, hidden among the trees. It had a light blue roof and red exterior paint. Outside the main gate was a beautiful porch, a small pavilion built into the grounds. In the lower left corner of the porch was a small stone sculpture of a lion, though it resembled a miniature Chinese stone lion. The yard was about the size of a basketball court. As Dinan got out of the car, the Akita dog, which had been chasing bees, immediately ran towards him and jumped onto his arms. Dinan held up the dog and said to Yukai, "This is Bullet." "Hello, Bullet." Woof woof. The door opened a crack, and a little girl in denim clothes emerged from the room with a lovely smile on her face. She called out sweetly, "Daddy, you're finally home." The little girl, like Dinan, had blonde hair and a scarf emblazoned with the Australian flag. "This is my daughter. Let's call her Lilith." "Lilith, and this is the uncle I told you about. He's a world traveler." "Wow," the little girl said enviously, her big, jewel-like eyes looking at Yukai. "Uncle, can you take me on a trip?" Seeing that she wasn't afraid of strangers, Yukai squatted down and jokingly said, "Of course. With your daddy's permission, I can take you on a trip. We can go anywhere you want." The little girl looked at Dinan, twisting her body and acting coquettishly, "Daddy." At that moment, two people came out from behind the house, carrying a whole, processed cow. "Hi, Dinan," they greeted. Dinan laughed heartily and introduced them. "This is Kai from Huaxia." "Oh, Sean. These two are my friends, Gibbon and Philip. I called them over to help with the party later." Yukai said, "Well, I have to help too. What should I do now?" He had thought Dinan's talk of throwing a party on the phone was a joke, but he hadn't expected it to be a real party. The man carrying the cow was Dinan's longtime friend. Philip was a music producer, and the other was Gibbon, a Tasmanian native who had lived in Tasmania for over a decade and ran a sushi restaurant. He had met his wife in Tasmania while he was there, so he left his job and moved to Tasmania to open a sushi restaurant. He pulled out a large barbecue grill from the corner of the yard and a string of light bulbs and began to install them around the perimeter. The basics for a party were complete. Then, Philip pulled a controller from his suitcase and expertly connected it to the speakers. Suddenly, a torrent of electronic music washed over Yukai. "Wow!" Yukai exclaimed with a laugh. Dinan and his two friends were all married. The women were inside preparing dinner for the evening. Yukai had already met them when he entered. Under the pristine Australian sky, one could almost see the passage of time. After a busy afternoon, the crowd had barely rested before nightfall arrived. Dinan had obviously invited others, and as evening fell, they began to arrive. Most of them were young men and women in their 20s and 30s, many from the small town. This time, Dinan didn't introduce Yukai one by one. At a party like this, getting to know anyone was easy, all it took was a glass of wine. This was true for both men and women. Bright lights shone throughout the courtyard, transforming it into a separate kingdom in the darkness. The chill of the night never reached this place. Soft music played from the speakers, enhancing the atmosphere. In the corner of the courtyard, a group of young men and women gathered. Yukai approached and saw a boy, presumably a high school student, performing card tricks. His looks must have been popular with the girls. He was holding a deck of cards. He flipped the top card and placed it in the beautiful girl's palm, saying, "I don't know what card you chose, but it doesn't matter. As long as I hold your hand, it will become the card you drew earlier." The boy's hand and the girl's hand clasped together. "Never mind." Yukai picked up a wine glass from the table and walked towards the roast beef. The beef was now roasted to golden brown, and the oil continued to flow into the flames, sending up a small string of sparks. The aroma of cooked meat and spices gradually filled the courtyard. Yoshimoto also came over with a wine glass. He looked at the roast beef and said, "I'm craving it." "Me too," Yukai said. Although there was plenty of food on the table, bread, fried chicken, for a meat lover like Yukai, it was this massive, freshly grilled steak that caught his attention. "Your sushi is delicious too," Yukai suddenly said. The sushi restaurant owner had also contributed his skills, making a lot of sushi. and everyone here loved it. Almost everyone who came in would grab a piece. The wooden grid where the sushi was placed was now empty. Several pots of sushi had been devoured. Yoshimoto chuckled quietly and said to Yukai, "It was interesting when I first came here. They didn't know sushi or miso soup, and they thought it was all Chinese cuisine. But now they seem to have gotten used to the taste of sushi, you know? In the beginning, I made 5 pots of sushi a day, but I'd still eat the leftovers myself." "What about now?" Yukai asked. "Now I'm only open 3 days a week, and I make 60 bowls of sushi every day, but they were usually sold out by 2 or 3 in the afternoon." Yoshimoto stroked his graying hair and said, "Everyone has to live for themselves. I like to spend more time at home with my wife and grow vegetables in the yard. In my free time, I go surfing and fishing. I love both of those things, but it's a pity I can't surf yet." Yoshimoto laughed and said, "Dinant is Australia's best professional surfer. If he teaches you in 2 days, you'll definitely surpass an old man like me." Tasmania isn't a particularly famous tourist destination, so encountering a foreign tourist is not easy. Yukai and Jiben are both Asians, and Jiben naturally feels closer to Yukai. The aroma of beef became stronger and stronger. Yukai twitched his nose, swallowed the saliva in his mouth, and said, "The beef is already roasted, shall we cut it?" Jiben nodded, and he and Yukai stood on each side, took off the beef with force, and placed it on the clean tin foil on the side. Dinan also came over with a knife at this time. "Well, of course, it is for cutting beef." He divided the beef into pieces and put them in several large basins. "Those who want to eat can just take it themselves." Yukai's stomach made an inopportune rumbling sound, and Dinan and Jiben who were standing beside him laughed. At the same time, Jiben also invited Yukai and said, "How about we meet to surf together tomorrow?" Of course. Chapter 117, Getting Started. The day after the party, Dinan took Yukai out to buy a surfboard. Then, Dinan, Gibbon, and Yukai drove to the beach in Narrows Bay, a 40-minute drive from the town. Australia has become a renowned tourist destination, and the continent's renowned surfing spots are packed with tourists from all over the world. Consequently, many locals seeking surfing, as well as discerning tourists, flock to Tasmania to find the perfect spot along the vast coastline. For coastal Australians, surfing has become an integral part of life, a sport they take great pride in. When Yukai and his friends arrived at Narrows Bay, they saw scores of surfers riding the waves in the distance. The nearby beach was a hive of activity for the girls. The glaring sunlight revealed dazzling expanses of skin. The curvaceous figures of Westerners were a true eye-catcher on the beach, though they clearly didn't care about the glances. After removing their shirts and shoes and placing them in the trunk of the car, the 3 of them walked onto the beach in their swimsuits and shorts. The sea breeze blew from the ocean to the shore, as if resisting the arrival of the surfers. Riding the wind and waves is the coolest phrase in the eyes of humans, but in the eyes of the sea it is only an insult, right? Yoshimoto only had eyes for the waves in the distance. After getting off the car, he said to Yukai, "Come on," and then ran towards the ocean. He is already in his 40s, how can he still be so energetic? Yukai looked at the beautiful women basking in the sun, then focused on learning to surf. He asked Dinan, "What should I do now?" The important thing now is not to look at the girls, but to become a knight of the sea with those surfers. Sports are the romance of men. And compared to looking at the girls on the beach, wouldn't it be more exciting to become a surfer and let the girls look at you? Finding an open space, Dinan had Yukai place his surfboard on the ground and said, "Let me teach you how to take off." He also placed his own surfboard on the ground and demonstrated, "I'll break down the takeoff movement for you. Watch carefully." Okay, let's start with the first step. The first move is to push your arms up while straightening your waist. The second move is to use the strength of your waist to forcefully pull your feet forward. Dinan linked these 2 moves together. Yukai only saw him push up against the surfboard briefly before stepping firmly on it. The third move is to turn your body and lower your center of gravity. Remember to use your arms for balance. He stood aside and said to Yukai, "Actually, those are the 3 moves. Try them." This move is not difficult to master on land. Under Dinan's guidance, Yukai's takeoff movement became more and more accurate. As long as you remember how to apply force and where to place your feet after taking off, this exercise is easy to learn. However, surfing for beginners can't be learned on the shore, it must be learned in the sea. There are specialized surfing training equipment in mainland China, but not in Australia. Everyone here trains in the ocean, and waves are everywhere. If you're afraid of danger, just go to a calmer surfing spot. Why bother with fake surfing? Seeing Yukai already doing it well, Dinan said, "Let's go surfing." He made it sound so simple. Yukai rolled his eyes and headed for the beach, board in hand. Dinan had already run out of sight. From a distance, he called out to Yukai, "Sean? What are you doing? Go, go, run." To catch up with Dinan, Yukai also broke into a run for the ocean. The wind whipped at Yukai vigorously, but it clearly couldn't blow away an adult, only his hair. His rapid movement caught the attention of the people around him. The girls all focused their eyes on Yukai. He looked so handsome. Some even stood up, hesitant to approach him. He ran past camera-wielding geeks, wealthy men with potbellies traveling with their female companions, and bikini-clad girls hesitant to speak. Dinan burst into laughter at the sight. By the time Yukai reached them, the two handsome men had already sprinted towards the ocean. The roar of the ocean grew louder and louder, the waves tirelessly scouring the fine sand on the beach. Walking on this sand was a breeze, no need to worry about hurting your feet. Of course, be careful to keep the ground clear of broken household garbage. Once you reach the ocean, place your surfboard on the surface, the powerful buoyancy will keep it afloat like a boat. As long as a surfer weighs less than 300 or 400 pounds, there's no need to worry about sinking. Yukai and Dinan clearly weren't that heavy. They paddled their way out to the far end of the ocean. Surfing wasn't necessarily near the coast. When they reached Yoshimoto, he said to Yukai in surprise, "You've learned so quickly." "It's too early. I just learned how to stand up." "Being able to stand up is enough," Dinan said, interrupting. "The most important thing about surfing is standing up, but don't try to compete with others for the wave." Competing for the wave. Yukai had never heard of the term. Dinan sat on his surfboard and said to Yukai, "Unless everyone agrees in advance, only one person can surf each wave. The person closest to the wave has priority. But since you're just learning, just surfing a few small waves is enough. No one will compete with you." Dinan looked around and said, "Follow me." He broke away from the large group waiting for waves and swam with Yukai towards the small waves in the distance. These waves were no taller than a meter, and experienced surfers would look down on them. But they were definitely perfect for Yukai to practice on. Yukai dipped his arms into the sea, feeling the cool water, and followed Dinan's instructions as he waited for the wave to approach. "Here, get ready," Dinan said. A white edge approached from a distance, gradually rising at a visible speed, becoming one of the most common small waves on the ocean. From where Yukai was, there was no need to chase the wave. He just had to stay where he was and wait for the wave to come and take off smoothly. As a novice, Yukai had low expectations for himself. Just being able to stand on such a small wave would satisfy him. The wave was getting closer and closer, and when the force of the wave lifted the surfboard, Dinan shouted, "Get on the board." Even if Dinan hadn't shouted, Yukai knew it was time. The movements that he had repeated so many times on the shore finally came in handy. Yukai used the most standard movements to get on the board and stood steadily on the surfboard. However, the surfboard didn't move. Yukai's heart skipped a beat, and he thought, "This is a bad start, I actually failed." A few seconds later, Yukai leaned back and fell into the water. P.S. Everyone, please click on the red thing in the lower left corner, it's called the recommendation ticket, and don't ever say you'll definitely do it next time. Chapter 118 Surfing. Dinan clapped his hands and praised, "Not bad, you're standing up on your first try. But if only you were a little faster. Look at my takeoff." These small waves are called nearshore waves, the kind you see on the beach, stacked one on top of the other, perfect for practicing takeoffs. As the wave approached Dinan, he quickly braced his palms on the surfboard. In the next second, Dinan executed the following maneuvers simultaneously. The contact between his hands and the surfboard was fleeting, as if scalded. In that moment, his body defied Newton's laws. He soared and stepped onto the surfboard. The surge lifted the surfboard steadily forward. Dinan glided over 10 meters across the surface. Once the surge's thrust completely dissipated, he jumped into the water and said to Yukai, "How's it going? Did you get it?" "Almost there. I'll try again." It looked simple enough. Who couldn't do those few moves? But many things seem easy, but they're actually difficult to do. Such fluidity wasn't just due to Dinan's excellent physique. The experience gained through long training was the secret to Dinan's success in the surfing world. Yukai fell into the water 3 times in a row. Finally, on his 5th attempt, He landed firmly on the board. The sense of accomplishment that moment brought Yukai was indescribable. It was a completely different experience from skateboarding on land. There was no rustling of wheels, no need to worry about anything blocking the wheels, and no need to worry about bumping into anything. All he had to do was maintain his balance on the board. That was all. Then, he could feel the incomparable exhilaration of surfing. Yukai even wanted to shout from his surfboard, but the thrill lasted only a few seconds. The current wasn't strong enough, and when the wave's force wasn't enough to keep the board moving, Yukai fell into the water. From the thrill to the drenching, it was only a few seconds. Too short. If only he could surf longer. The exhilaration that had been surging just now hadn't been expressed, leaving Yukai feeling a bit depressed, and deep down he longed for bigger, larger waves. Keep practicing, Yukai waited for the next wave. Dinan watched Yukai from his surfboard, occasionally cheering him on and clapping his hands in encouragement. He was very pleased with Yukai's progress. For a first-time surfer, it was rare to see such a good takeoff, and Yukai maintained perfect control throughout the ride. As long as he could take off smoothly, he wouldn't stumble and stagger on the board like a novice. Yukai had both core strength and balance. Realizing Yukai had the talent to be an excellent surfer, Dinan devoted extra effort to his teaching. Soon, Yukai was completely proficient at taking off on small waves like these. Dinan felt that Yukai wouldn't be able to continue practicing on such waves, so he said, "Let's go ashore and rest for a while." Okay, Yukai agreed. When he returned to land, accustomed to the unstable feeling of being on a surfboard, Yukai felt the ground shake, sometimes rising, sometimes sinking. After a few more steps, he finally felt better. He exhaled, stretched his joints slightly, and sat down with Dinan under a parasol on the beach, buying 2 glasses of juice. "How do you feel?" Dinan asked with a smile. "I feel a little bit, but I don't feel excited." Yukai looked at the huge waves in the distance, feeling a little envious of those people. As his juice was almost finished, Yukai remembered the invitation to Dinan to film a commercial and asked, "Dinan, are you doing commercials?" "What kind of commercials?" Dinan asked. He had indeed filmed some, both commercials and documentaries, and had given many interviews. Surfing wasn't a profitable industry. The sport still didn't have a large audience, and competitions like the International Surfing Championship and the National Surfing Open had only begun to be held in recent years. Ordinary surfers could only earn prize money, while those with a long list of championships, like Dinan, were invited to judge at various surfing competitions or perform surfing demonstrations. Yukai introduced a Kingnia beverage to Dinan, and the taurine and caffeine in its ingredients surprised Dinan. "Does it work?" "Of course," Yukai affirmed. "And it's passed food safety testing, and production is now permitted in China. Personally, I don't think it's appropriate to have someone endorse this type of functional beverage." Yukai considered having a sprinter endorse Kingnia, but his uncle quickly vetoed the idea. Even if Kingnia passed food safety testing, its ingredients contained caffeine, a substance repeatedly banned by the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, and then repeatedly lifted. If it were banned during the endorsement process, the athletes endorsing Kingnia would undoubtedly be implicated. So, Yukai abandoned the idea and turned his attention to extreme sports. Could a specific industry represent Kingnia? Kingnia didn't use any celebrities to promote it, and its packaging didn't feature anyone's portrait. So why was a spokesperson necessary? Wouldn't it be better to simply put the Kingnia logo on extreme sports? After changing his mind, Yukai immediately thought of surfing. Dinan was now a well-known figure in the surfing world, and he was also a close friend, so filming a commercial shouldn't be too difficult. Using surfing in a commercial, won't anyone watch it? Dinan worried. Yukai asked, "Is surfing cool?" "What do you think?" Dinan countered. "And is it thrilling?" "I see what you mean," Dinan nodded. "So when will we film it?" "I promise." Yukai stood up, stretched his arms, and said, facing the sun, "Don't worry. I'll call China when I get back. Can we go try some real waves now?" He couldn't wait. Dinan chuckled and picked up his own surfboard. Australia's best surfing season is from March to May. During this period, the waves are of excellent quality, many exceeding 2 meters, and sometimes even 20 meters. The two quickly swam to the wave waiting area. Yoshimoto was still there, a little exhausted, but he sat steadily on his board, watching the others scramble for waves. "Did you learn it this time?" he asked Yukai. Yukai couldn't tell, so he said to Jibern, "Hey, give it a try." Dinan warned, Don't try to catch a wave. If you see someone standing up on a wave, jump in to avoid that wave and wait. There aren't many surfers here, so if you can't catch a wave, they'll give it to you. Don't worry. As Dylan spoke, he suddenly looked off into the distance and said, "Remember, I'm leaving first." Then he lay down on his surfboard and swam out into the calm ocean. A dozen or so surfers around him looked at Dylan curiously, wondering why he'd swim so far out when the waves hadn't even arrived. "What's going on?" Yukai asked Gibern, also confused. Chapter 119. It was me first. Just watch, Yoshimoto smiled mysteriously. That's a champion surfer's sixth sense. He always knows when the biggest wave is coming. Yukai turned his gaze toward Dylan, then looked further out. Did he sense a wave? The ocean was calm, though that wasn't entirely accurate, as the breeze blew year-round. But the sea had indeed quieted, as if something sinister was lurking within, an invisible undercurrent gathering momentum. In the distance, a white edge edged toward the left of the wave-waiting area. A big wave. Everyone saw it. There are three types of waves: wind waves, swells, and offshore waves. The waves Yukai used for practice were called offshore waves, and the wave in the distance, heading to the left, was a wind wave. Though it hadn't fully formed yet, one could already guess its height once it formed. Is that a big wave? A big wave caused by a change in the weather. While everyone cheered for the surfing hero, Yukai was thrilled to have discovered a great secret. If the situation were to repeat, Yukai might spot this wave even faster than Dylan. He had maxed out his weather prediction skill. He could sense strong winds, and on the Australian coast these days, strong winds meant big waves. A good wave was a surfer's eternal pursuit, with some extreme surfers even going so far as to chase tsunamis. While many would consider this suicidal, extreme sports fans saw it as a testament to surfers' unwavering courage. The wave gradually took shape, initially a single swell that quickly grew into a 10-meter-tall swell. Dylan was the only one on the scene who could ride it. Others, even those who spotted it, were hesitant to try. Chasing a 10-meter wave was considered the province of extreme athletes, and none of the surfers here had the skill. When the rising wave lifted Dylan's board, he did as he had demonstrated to Yukai before, taking off without hesitation, soaring onto the board as if gravity had vanished. The wave propelled Dylan forward, sending him hurtling forward. The force of the wave lifted Dylan 5 or 6 meters above the surface, and under Dylan's control, the board careened toward the wave's edge. After regaining his balance, he clenched his right fist and pumped it vigorously twice. Dylan's shouts could be faintly heard. Yukai, standing in the distance, was filled with envy. What a beautiful wave! The 10-meter-high wave was visible even from the shore, and countless people stood to watch Dylan's performance. At that moment, the ocean was the stage, and Dylan was the sole dancer, radiant in the waves and sunlight. Beneath the massive wave, Dylan's surfboard carved a white streak in the ocean. The water rushed down like an avalanche, and Dylan was like a skier dodging an avalanche. After gliding for an unknown amount of time, the underlying force driving the wave gradually faded. The highest water curled up like cooked noodles, crashing onto the surface to form a massive whitecap. This whitecap was so fast that it caught up with Dylan. Just as Yukai was worried about Dylan, a black dot appeared in the whitecaps. Dylan, still standing on his surfboard, emerged from the wave. Everyone cheered. This is why Yukai used extreme sports for his advertising campaign. Such sports are incredibly visually impactful, and with the addition of rapid background music and quick editing, Yukai was sure to keep anyone watching under 40. The waves finally died down, and Dylan jumped in, swimming towards the waiting area. Everyone welcomed Dylan like a hero returning home, clapping and shouting, "Nice wave! Nice!" Yukai high-fived Dylan and exclaimed, "That's awesome!" As Dylan stood on the giant wave, Yukai's heart nearly stopped beating. Just then, another wave appeared in the distance. This one was normal, about 2 or 3 meters high. Dylan glanced at the wave and said to Yukai, "Go ahead, this wave is yours." With no one around to compete for the ride, Yukai nodded and swam towards the wave. First day of surfing lessons, riding a 3-meter wave. Dylan had great confidence in Yukai. He felt that as long as Yukai made no major mistakes, he was more than capable of handling waves of this strength, and there was no need to worry. Yukai's takeoff wasn't as fast as Dylan's, but he was already at the level of a seasoned expert. He completed his takeoff the instant the wave approached. This wave was vastly different from the ordinary waves he'd played with before. The powerful thrust of the wave pushed the surfboard upward and forward. This upward force was erratic. It wasn't a smooth rise and fall, but rather a strong jolt like a car passing over a bumpy road, requiring Yukai to maintain his balance and center of gravity. After a straight line for a distance, Yukai found his rhythm. When the wave's thrust gradually subsided, he turned and returned to the highest point of the wave, continuing forward for a distance. If there was no more thrust, he would return to the crest until the wave subsided. Yoshimoto watched Yukai from afar and praised him. That sharp turn and descent on the wave crest is so beautiful. Did you teach him? No, Dinan said. I didn't teach him that. He must have learned it on his own. Sean is incredibly talented, a natural wave chaser. You wouldn't have thought, would you? Haha, a seemingly quiet and sunny boy actually loves such an exciting sport. Yoshimoto looked at Yukai enjoying himself in the distance and said, I really envy him. He's able to break free from the shackles that bind him at such a young age. Dinan scratched his hair and said non-committally, I don't really understand what you Orientals are saying. Yukai was swimming back. The waves were still so cool. The moment he stood up was so refreshing. After returning to the wave waiting area, he chatted with Yoshimoto and Dinan for a while and rested for a while. Then, Yukai saw clouds in the distance. He knew another good wave was coming. The incoming wind wasn't as strong as the one Dinan had surfed before, but Yukai compared it and guessed that this wave might be around 6 meters high. With waves like that, even if he made a mistake, he wouldn't get hurt. Yukai smiled at Dinan, then turned and swam off into the distance. The sea was calm, and everyone was waiting for the next wave. Yukai's actions drew their attention to him. Could someone else have discovered the hidden wave? Jiben, with a dazed expression, stared at Dinan, hoping for confirmation. Dinan, too, wore a look of disbelief. Seeing Jiben's expression, he nodded and said, yes, he found it. Jiben leaned back, eyes widening. How is that possible? As he swam, Yukai spotted someone in the target area, swimming towards him, apparently heading for the wave waiting area. This person, a new surfer, hadn't even managed the small wave just now. The waves rolled in, and then a huge one appeared. Yukai was already prepared, pushing off with both hands and quickly taking off. The wave rose higher and higher, climbing straight up to 6 or 7 meters, lifting Yukai 3 meters above the water. Yukai was concentrating on enjoying the thrill of surfing when, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the person behind him also stand up. What do you mean? Are you trying to steal my spot? I was here first. Chapter 120 Chance Encounter. No, he shouldn't have jumped on the wave. There weren't many surfers here to begin with, so if he'd been allowed one ride per person, it would have been his turn soon. And this wasn't a competition, so there was no reason to jump on the wave. And the wave had already started to build. If he couldn't handle it, he should have dived. Did he not know how to dive? Or did he think he couldn't swim the wave, so he took the risk of standing up, trying to use the wave's force to get out of the center and toward the edge? Never mind. The wave was so big, there was no guarantee two people would collide. Smaller waves would have been dangerous for two people, but a wave this big wouldn't be a problem. It's like beginners roller skating. In tight spaces, they're prone to bumping into each other, but in a regular surfing area, where everyone's surfing separately, it's unlikely to happen. At this speed, the sea breeze whipped Yukai's hair, rustling in his ears. Riding these waves was like riding a skateboard, careening down a nearly vertical highway. The sense of speed and intense excitement would send the adrenaline rushing and create a sense of excitement. This is why people who exercise regularly become addicted, feeling uncomfortable without a day's exercise. Addiction to extreme sports can be even more serious. While enjoying the thrill of high speed, Yukai kept a close eye on another person. His technique was already quite poor. He'd been knocked over by waves around 2 meters before, let alone this 6 or 7 meter wave. Yukai noticed the color drained from his face, not knowing if it was from fear or the effect of prolonged seawater exposure. Suddenly, the person's footing stumbled. The force of the underwater impact had suddenly intensified, like riding a bicycle and accidentally hitting a speed bump at high speed. This immense impact demands a surfer's physical control over the board. He lost his balance and his body left the board. The massive wave slammed down like a pair of giant hands. The board instantly split in two, and the person was swept along by the swirling water, like being thrown into a washing machine. He spun twice in the swirling current before being swept into the depths of the ocean. Help! Yukai had no time to think about anything else. He immediately untied himself from the surfboard and plunged into the water with a splash, struggling to swim down the wave. Seawater and fish pelted him like rain on banana leaves, slowing his descent. He wasn't sure if this was right or dangerous, but if he saw someone in danger, Yukai's first thought was to lend a hand. He stretched out his body in the water like a letter X, then with all his might, he closed his mouth and dove deeper. By then, the force of the wave had weakened to a point where Yukai could no longer feel the pressure. The wave had already passed him. However, Yukai still hadn't noticed where the person had been thrown. Surfaced quickly for air, Yukai saw other surfers heading their way, but they couldn't reach the same spot for at least a minute. Yukai continued his dive, searching. Soon, Yukai spotted the man floating more than 10 meters underwater, his yellow hair swirling like seaweed, unconscious. Had he untied his surfboard before he passed out? The buoyancy of the surfboard would have made it easier for Yukai to find him, keeping him afloat. Yukai grabbed him and began swimming toward shore. Dinan had already swum over, eagerly asking, "What's wrong?" He fainted. After everyone helped him into a car, Yukai felt his strength drain away and collapsed onto the beach. A whirlwind of thoughts raced through his mind. Was surfing so dangerous? The man was already in shock when they got him to the car. Could he die? Dinan crouched before Yukai and said, "You saved him, Sean." "I know." But whether he could actually be saved, Yukai didn't know. He was a bit distracted, and the others had lost interest in surfing, so they prepared to return. At that moment, two girls, clearly Chinese, arrived at the beach. Upon spotting Yukai, they screamed and ran towards him. "Yukai. It's Yukai." When they reached Yukai, they stopped, one of them speechless for a moment. Another girl said, "Yukai, we're your fans. We've liked you from the beginning." Yeah, the other girl finally spoke. "We just came back from here yesterday when you posted on Weibo. We guessed you were on this island, so we searched a lot of beaches today." They didn't have a specific destination, so they just wandered around, hoping to run into Yukai. Now, it was a lucky break. One of them took out a pen and said, "Can you sign an autograph for us?" "No problem." A smile broke across Yukai's pale face. Taking the pen, Yukai wrote his name in the notebook they had prepared, still in beautiful cursive Chinese characters. The love between fans and idols is truly amazing. While their methods of finding someone might be a bit silly, overall, they're quite intelligent. And of course, some luck, too. They pulled a box from their backpacks and said, "This is a gift from us." Yukai took the gift box from them. The packaging looked like some kind of Australian candy. Just then, Yoshimoto came over with Yukai's surfboard and said, "Let's go." A surfboard. Yukai took the newly bought board from him, hesitated, and handed it to the two girls, saying, "I don't have anything to give you, so I'll give you this surfboard." "Really?" "No, how can we take your things?" The two girls said different answers at the same time. Yukai smiled warmly and handed them the surfboard. He didn't feel like surfing anymore. After what had just happened, Yukai suddenly felt scared. "Here," Yukai said. The surfboard wasn't heavy. Today's technology is far superior to what surfers of decades ago could have achieved. The special material used in the surfboard made it extremely light, so even the two girls could easily lift it. Can we take a photo together? And we want to ask when you'll release a new song. We've been waiting for you." "Okay, we can take a photo together. The song will be out soon." "Thank you." After taking photos with him, Yukai and Dinan left the beach. Dinan was driving, his serious expression forming a sharp contrast with Yukai's relaxed demeanor. Yukai joked, "Hey, everyone, cheer up. Didn't I save him? Let's go see how he's doing tomorrow." "Why did you give your surfboard away?" Dinan asked. "Nothing." Chapter 121 Little Kangaroo. The young man who fell into the water was lucky to survive. If Yukai hadn't been nearby, he might not have. There were no rescue facilities like jet skis on the beach, and the closest people were a group of surfers. Swimming against the waves would have taken at least a minute. Yukai breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing the news. It was a good thing, but it also affected his thinking. For 3 days, he didn't go to the beach again. Meanwhile, a 5-person crew from China had arrived in Australia to film the commercial. Filming the commercial wasn't difficult. They simply rented a helicopter and a drone to capture Dinan's surfing performance. The most challenging part wasn't Dinan's condition, it was waiting for a visually impressive wave. To film the commercial, waves had to be at least 10 meters high. Only riding waves over 10 meters high could be considered an extreme sport. While they were at the beach, Yukai set off alone for a wildlife sanatorium in Tasmania. The sanatorium wasn't run by a wildlife conservation organization, but rather by an official Australian conservation organization. Before he left, he'd previewed the live stream on Weibo, so by the time he started, thousands of people were already waiting. The Pigeon King has started. Go check out the baby kangaroos. Because Yukai frequently stood up others, he naturally earned the nickname Pigeon King. Needless to say, Yukai was deeply dissatisfied with this title. He'd barely done a few live streams, and the number of times he'd stood them up was even smaller. How did he get such a nickname? It didn't make sense. With so many people on live streaming websites, there was no way he could be called the Pigeon King. It was too high profile. Pigeon King sounds so unpleasant. Yukai frowned, then suddenly smiled and said, "Just call me handsome guy. It's more accessible, and it suits my personality." Yukai walked down the path, selfie stick in hand. Ahead was the sanatorium. He could already see the gate. He was dressed coolly, a white short-sleeved shirt and a hat to shield himself from the sun. Since the place wasn't far from where he lived, Yukai hadn't even brought his travel bag. He walked out the door, carrying a camera and a selfie stick. "Hachu, how shameless, but I like it so much, hachu." Yukai waved at his phone and said, "I know what's going on, I know what's going on." The comments were filled with question marks. Logically, there was no refutation. Yukai's face looked flawless even up close. I just wondered if he used makeup. Otherwise, for a man, he'd be incredibly refined. Some people had previously asked Yukai to wear women's clothing, but after seeing his muscular physique, few people said so. Many of Yukai's admirers were girls. Isn't it nice to see a sunny, handsome guy? Why wear women's clothing? The Wildlife Rehabilitation Center is just ahead, Yukai said. In front of the entrance to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center stood a large artificial stone with a red background and black borders, depicting an animal and a row of English letters, representing the center's name. Yukai held his phone close to the animal depicted on the stone and said, "Do you know what this animal is? Why does it look a little like a bat to me?" "Is this a bat?" "Of course it is. I looked it up. It's a wombat, with its pig-like snout, human-like eyes, and triangular ears, and simple outlines. Anyone would mistake it for a bat at first glance. But it's actually a wombat." Australia is most famous for its various marsupials. While researching, Yukai discovered that marsupials were once distributed worldwide, but lacked effective competitiveness. Over a long period of evolution, they were eliminated by hunting by large carnivores. Before that, Australia separated from the other continents and became a secluded paradise, devoid of large carnivores. This allowed these marsupials to thrive and thrive. Australia is also known as a living fossil museum. This sanatorium specializes in treating injured wild animals. They are brought here for rescue or conservation, and after recovery, they are returned to the wild. That's the biggest difference between the sanatorium and a zoo. Of course, admission is charged. Tickets are sold in a small wooden building to the left of the main entrance. The price is 29 Australian dollars. After paying, Yukai commented to the live stream, "It's 29 Australian dollars, which is about 130 Chinese yuan. But I think the ticket office isn't well designed. If I hadn't bought a ticket, I could still have walked in. It seems like buying a ticket is purely a matter of instinct." Further inside, there's a meadow dotted with dozens of kangaroos, mostly very young, presumably because they're less aggressive. A staff member from the nursing home is feeding the kangaroos. Sitting on the grass, he holds a baby kangaroo in his left hand while stroking another's neck with his right. The kangaroos are practically lying on the ground in comfort. So cute. Perhaps because Yukai arrived so early, there aren't many people around. Yukai also walked over and sat next to the staff member, asking, "Can I pet them?" Of course, the staff member said, "But don't use too much force, just gently stroke their fur." Unlike wildlife in Europe, Asia, and Africa, many of the wild animals here are quite docile and can be touched or even held. Yesterday, Yukai saw a koala outside Dinan's yard. Not only Yukai, but Dinan's daughter as well, were able to pet a koala without issue. However, doing so in public is illegal, and there are only a few places in Australia where koalas can be held. As soon as Yukai sat down, a baby kangaroo jumped into his arms. "You're quite popular with them," the staff member said with a smile, handing him some kangaroo treats and asking, Would you like to try some? He took the treats, which looked like cat food, and said, "Thank you." The baby kangaroo, only about 40 centimeters long and furry, jumped into Yukai's arms, lying on its back on his feet, exposing its belly. Sure enough, it had a small pouch. Yukai observed the kangaroo's mood and reached out to touch its pouch. The little kangaroo suddenly curled up, as if being tickled, but soon stretched out again, looking at Yukai expectantly. He continued petting. The little creature made an unknown sound, which Yukai thought was the kangaroo's laughter. It seemed to enjoy the game Yukai was playing with it, and stretched out again. "I'm so jealous. I really want to have one. I want to be a travel blogger, too. Any advice, Brother Kai?" Yukai scooped up the little kangaroo and set it on the ground, saying, "You've eaten too much? Go down and play." Just as he had put the little creature down on the grass, another one hopped over. After it got on Yukai, it didn't need Yukai to help it lie down. It just fell on Yukai's legs, as if saying, "You can't just play with it, you have to treat it equally." Thanks to Legend 1991A, Gray Sky is me, a book friend who has always been short of books, the cicadas and the flowing water in early summer that year, fat ants, basic mechanic, men's department please go to the second floor, chasing dreams is really hard, I love Phoenix FH, L31 this is just watching, Pingayao besieged city. I only realized how much I have to thank you for. Thank you all for your support. This book will be on the shelves on Friday. Friends who are planning to raise a book should remember to come and support Pick Tea on Friday. I expect there will be more updates. Oh. Chapter 122 Animal Sanatorium. Yukai tickled the baby kangaroo, its eyes narrowing in pleasure. Its body unconsciously began to lower, finally flopping flat on the ground. Stroking its fur, Yukai asked, "Is it comfortable? Tell me if it is." He stroked the kangaroo effortlessly, then glanced at his watch. He realized he'd already been here for over half an hour, and there was still a lot more to see. So, Yukai set the baby kangaroo down from his lap and stood up, ready to leave and explore the deeper reaches of the sanatorium. But as he walked inside, 3 baby kangaroos followed, bounding up. Yukai made a gesture to shoo them away, but it was clearly no use. He had no choice but to let them follow. Staff were everywhere in the sanatorium, and most of the animals were free-range. While the staff fed the animals, they also had to be careful not to harm them. After all, the animals here were so naive, they wouldn't even realize they were being sold. Seeing someone asking about his livestream schedule, Yukai explained, "I don't have a specific time. I love traveling, and if I can livestream somewhere, I'll do it. Of course, if I can think of it. Today's livestream is about this sanatorium. I learned to surf specifically to show you guys off, but then something happened and I gave up on that idea. Surely you can't learn it, surfing's pretty easy. I'll be able to do it in 3 days. Go, streamer." Yukai smiled and walked along the gravel path inside, selfie stick in hand. The sanatorium was beautifully landscaped, with lush green grass everywhere. The trees were lush and green under the abundant Australian sunshine. Koalas clung to the trees, and all sorts of beautiful birds soared in the sky. Ever since Yukai acquired the skill that increased his affinity with animals, most animals would actively come to him. Even the white lion, which was very afraid of humans, didn't mind his approach. But there was one animal that ignored him, the koala. They spend most of the day sleeping, with only 10% devoted to eating. They eat only leaves and, unless necessary, don't even need water. If you touch them, no matter who touches them, this little creature won't resist. For the first time, Yukai felt frustrated with an animal. He didn't think his skills had failed, but rather that this creature was simply lazy, so lazy that it wouldn't even resist being touched or hugged. Yukai glanced behind him, then spread his arms and wielded his selfie stick like a sword. A baby kangaroo took 2 jumps, then with a powerful kick of its thighs, leaped right into Yukai's chest. He quickly closed his arms around the kangaroo, rubbing its head like a cat. The staff marveled. They'd worked for so long, yet they couldn't achieve this kind of rapport with the kangaroos. At best, they'd just sit and play with them, the little kangaroos wouldn't jump on them. "Anchor, you're a real dog. Hold the camera steady, damn it, a little dizzy, so envious, I wish we could travel like this, too, I can't be envious, haha." Yukai laughed heartily, carrying the little one around the park. Few animals are caged here, but it's not entirely unheard of. Yukai stood outside the fence, focusing his camera on the critters inside. I just saw the sign. This critter is called a Tasmanian devil. Its scientific name seems to be a quoll, and it's an endangered species in Australia. The quoll was lying in its own den. When it noticed Yukai, it ran from its hole to the fence and sniffed at him non-stop. Only then did everyone see the quoll's true appearance. It looked like a shrunken black bear, with a band of white fur on its chest. When it saw Yukai, a faint curve formed on its mouth. It looked like it was smiling. Yukai reached out and stroked him, gently scratching him twice. The quoll's fur wasn't as soft as the baby kangaroo's, and it was dry and hard. Behind Yukai, a peacock swaggered past, followed by its baby. The baby peacock stopped moving and stood at Yukai's feet. The peacock quickly turned back to look at its child. Why are all these animals so close to Brother Kai? That's a great question above. I'd also like to know why my own cat never lets me pet it, let alone hold it. Why is that, Brother Kai? Any advice? Yukai sighed and said helplessly, everyone says stop calling me Brother Kai. He handed the baby kangaroo to the staff to hold, then took a selfie stick and said, I don't have any experience raising animals, but I've always loved them. Maybe they know I mean no harm. After a pause, he continued, I'm more of a believer in fate now. Compatibility is the foundation for any living creature to interact normally. Of course, it could also be that you have a scent that cats don't like. Animals have a very sensitive sense of smell, and excessive use of perfume or other pungent scents can also make them stay away. Yukai couldn't explain the intimacy setting, but his answer was correct. After increasing the basic intimacy value, Yukai can reach out and touch an animal upon first encounter. It may seem small, but physical touch is a very important form of communication between animals. As long as one can touch an animal, the bond between them will increase significantly. It's even possible to domesticate a bear over a period of time, which is what many Russians do. There are definitely quite a few people in Russia who keep bears. Yukai continued to wander around the sanatorium, looking at all sorts of small animals. A parrot cried I love you loudly in a tree, and an anteater lowered its head to search for ant nests. In an iron cage, Yukai saw a wounded Australian dingo, its hind legs bandaged. It huddled in a corner like a child who had made a mistake, its head drooping. A pair of eyes glanced at you curiously, and then quickly shifted away, with only the tail wagging desperately. Yukai squatted beside the cage, pointed the camera at the cage and said, does it look like a pastoral dog? This animal is called the Australian dingo, and it looks really like the native dogs I've seen, especially when they were young. They are exactly the same. And Yukai suddenly said, this is the largest carnivorous wild animal in Australia. Yes, this is the largest carnivore, and they have no natural enemies in Australia. Humans? Humans must be excluded. Humans are the natural enemies of any animal. The barrage of comments kept flowing, and the live broadcast time increased, and more tourists came in. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123 How to Become a Travel Blogger. By the end of the tour, even the keepers were asking Yukai for advice on animal training, leaving him speechless. He simply gave them a few perfunctory words before leaving the sanatorium. That concludes today's live stream. Thank you all for watching. Yukai's previous live streams had always been either late at night or early in the morning, which was why, despite some buzz, they hadn't become a major hit. Ignoring the overwhelming amount of insignificant comments, Yukai resolutely turned off the stream. He put his phone in his pocket and suppressed his smile. Today's live stream was a bit awkward for Yukai. While the live stream itself was certainly enjoyable, and he enjoyed playing with the animals, it was the comments on the comments that troubled him. Ever since he started live streaming in Ireland, he'd been getting inquiries about becoming a travel blogger. Back then, few people were asking, and since he'd just quit his job to travel, he didn't know much, so he didn't respond. But starting in France, the number of inquiries has increased, and today, a small portion of the comments were asking Yukai how much money a travel blogger could make. Travel blogging has been repeatedly ranked among the top 3 happiest professions. Countless people around the world aspire to be like Yukai, writing travel logs while traveling, sharing the local scenery, food, and the things that touch them. The promise is to gain significant attention and earn a tidy profit. But is it truly profitable? He had just seen a comment about someone wanting to quit their job and start their own travels in China, just like Yukai. This sentiment worried Yukai, as it was likely influenced by him. Unsure how many people shared this idea, Yukai planned to record a video after returning home, sharing his insights on the industry. If they still wanted to become travel bloggers after watching the video, Yukai would feel a little better. Yukai felt that this career wasn't a cushy one, nor was it a lucrative one. If one jumped into it without knowing anything, they might regret it at some point. He found a car and returned to Dinan's house. Dinan's house was large, and Yukai had arranged to stay in the first-floor guest room. Lilith was playing with her dog on the grass outside the yard, while Dinan's wife was hanging out laundry. "Sean, you're back so soon." "Yes." After a quick chat, Yukai prepared to return to his room to make the video, but just then, two cars pulled into the yard, one owned by Dinan, the other rented by the crew. Dinan got out, beaming. Yukai, still concerned about the filming's progress, asked, "Have we seen the big waves yet?" Dinan's hair was still damp and slanted to one side, evidently having returned home after filming. Hearing Yukai's question, he said, "Of course. It's such a shame you weren't there." The director, Wang Dagan, a tall, thin man with black-framed glasses and a small mustache, also got out of the car and greeted Yukai, Mr. Yi. "Director Wang, thank you for your hard work," Yukai said enthusiastically. "Could you give me a copy of the footage? I have a lot of ideas about this sport myself, and I'd like to try editing it." Wang Dagan paused for a moment, then said, "Of course." Regardless of how Yukai edited the footage, they would still get their money. Besides, this was a small order, so Wang Dafa didn't pay much attention to the rules. Soon, 300 gigabytes of high-definition video was stored on Yukai's computer. Wang Dagan and his colleagues got on the car and said to Yukai, "Now that we have the footage, we will return to China for production tomorrow. The finished product will be sent to you within a week." "Thank you for your hard work," Yukai said. After the crew left the yard, Dinan put his arm around Yukai's shoulder and boasted, "We had so much fun just now. That wave was almost 15 meters long. You have no idea how long it took me to find it." Dinan, with his many years of surfing experience, knows how to find the right waves by observing the clouds at sea. Even so, it took him 2 days and dozens of beaches to find such a beautiful wave. Yukai smiled back, "Then I'll definitely enjoy your performance. The person who invented the camera is truly amazing, aren't you?" The two walked toward the house. As they reached the door, Dinan suddenly said, "How about going to the beach this afternoon?" "No, I have something else to do." He had been preparing to record a video after lunch, but on second thought, he didn't have the time. Perhaps hours would pass between recording, editing, and uploading. Dinan watched Yukai enter the room and said, somewhat dejectedly, "What the hell is this?" Yukai hadn't been near the beach since his last accident. In fact, when Dinan saw Yukai giving his surfboard away, he was worried about him. He must love the ocean, Dinan was certain of that. Yukai's expression and the look in his eyes while surfing were exactly like his own when he was young. There were times when he himself didn't want to surf, and even developed a fear of the ocean. What did his father do then? Dinan walked out of the room and watched Lilith and Zedin playing games on the grass in the yard, lost in his memories. Lunch was still prepared by Dinan's wife, a simple Western-style meal. Dinan's family had no objection to Yukai's freeloading, and on the contrary, they welcomed Yukai's visit. Their hospitality was so warm that Yukai felt a little embarrassed. He didn't know how much his father had given Dinan as a reward. As Dinan's friend, Yukai didn't feel comfortable asking about this. It would be awkward if it was too much or too little, so he simply left it to others to negotiate. In the room, Yukai set up his SLR camera, placed it on the table, and found the right angle. Then, with a satisfied nod, he turned on the recording mode. Without any preface, Yukai said directly, "Hello, everyone, I'm Yukai. Lately, I've noticed that many people have been asking me the same question in the private messages on Bilibili." Yukai pointed to his right with his right hand and spoke from top to bottom. "Brother Kai, how do I become a travel blogger? Brother Kai, I want to be a traveler. Where should I start? Does being a traveler pay well? Can I make money? What are the requirements to be a travel blogger?" It seems a bit silly now because there is nothing on the right side of him. Yukai will add subtitles to these questions during post-production. This is knowledge that Yukai started learning in college. This level of post-production is easy for him. Yukai shook his head and laughed a few times, saying, I don't know why, but a lot of people have asked me this kind of question recently, so I made this video specifically for it. Chapter 124, Don't be a travel blogger. While Yukai was recording in his room, Dinan found a perfectly packaged, unused surfboard in his collection. It had a white background with a blue border, and in the center was the initials of Dinan's name, with a line of words below the 2 capital letters. Dedicated to Dinan, the champion of the first Australian Surfing Championship. After spending so much time abroad, Yukai also took to using gestures to accompany his words. As he spoke, he was also multitasking, thinking about how to produce the video after the recording was completed. Okay, then I'll answer all the questions you asked me here. Maybe you see me having fun traveling around the country and the world, and I live in nice places. You might think, wow, being a travel blogger is really great, and you want to become one yourself. Of course, I'm glad that everyone shares this dream of traveling. It's a great idea, but are you really sure you want to make it your main job? Let me analyze it for you first. Yukai quickly drafted his thoughts. First, you have to think clearly about why you're a travel blogger. Is it for travel or for money? Speaking of travel, I personally didn't know why I wanted to be a travel blogger. Initially, I'd never been far from home, so I wanted to see the world. The idea of becoming a travel blogger came to me during my travels. Yukai certainly couldn't reveal his original intention to the audience. After all, he initially traveled for the money he earned from checking in at each city. It was only after he wrote 2 books that he finally broke free from financial pressure and truly began to enjoy travel. Asking Yukai to quit his job and travel with nothing and a car loan on his shoulders? It was simply impossible. If you're a travel blogger purely out of a desire to travel, then of course you can, as long as you can financially sustain the expense. It's very possible that at some point you'll gain a significant following, earn enough money, and start traveling for free. Secondly, as for the purpose of making money as a travel blogger, let me be honest with you. If you want to make money from traveling, it's impossible. You may have seen me enjoying myself, traveling all over the place, to Ireland, Paris, but all that is very expensive. From the beginning to now, I've used my own money to travel. The money I earned from Weibo and Bilibili probably wouldn't even cover the cost of a week's stay abroad, let alone the delicious food. So, you might be asking, where does my money come from? Many people know that I've written 2 books and a travelogue, one of which is about to be adapted into a TV series, which will air soon. I use the money I earned from this to travel. If you're thinking of making money as a regular travel blogger, that's impossible. If you're truly committed to it, I suggest becoming a live streamer. Live streaming and selling products is a very lucrative profession these days. Let's put aside the wealthy and those with a lot of cheats. For ordinary people, what's the point of having hundreds of thousands of dollars to travel? Yukai prefers to visit Bilibili. Last time, he came across a travel anchor who started traveling with very little money and posted his travel notes on Bilibili. Judging from the number of followers, he is already a very popular anchor. Does he actually make money? Watching his videos, you can't see famous mountains and rivers, nor can you see the Palace of Versailles or Trinity College. Most of the time, he is posting about what can be bought in XX for 100 Chinese yuan, or what it is like to live in the slums of XX place for a week. Yukai absolutely dare not imagine what it is like to live in a slum for a night. He always brings a lot of equipment with him on every trip. The value of these equipment is enough to make some people take risks. Maybe after a sleep, they will never get up again and be thrown into the gangs. Without some money to ensure your safety abroad, a beautiful trip will become a very scary thing. Yukai continued, now that I've said all this, if you still want to become a travel blogger, let me tell you what skills you need. The most basic ones are travel journaling, photography, video production, and live streaming. Those are the essentials. If you don't have any of these, you can't make money from traveling. You must master at least one of these 4, and you need to be very professional and skilled. Ideally, master all of them. I'm decent at the first 3, and as you've seen, my live streams have been pretty tepid. What other skills are needed? If you want to travel abroad, it's best to know a foreign language. For example, if you know Japanese, you can travel to island nations. If you know English, you can visit many countries where English is the first language. I'm currently fluent in English, German, and French, which are relatively mainstream languages. I also speak other languages, but not as well as these 3. After hearing all this, Perhaps some of you have given up on the idea. But if there are still those who are determined to become travel bloggers, let me explain how travel bloggers can make money. The first is bonuses from travel platforms. These websites sometimes post solicitations, and winning a prize earns you some money. The second is if you gain some influence, businesses will approach you, and you can earn money by taking on advertising. The third is becoming a live streamer or a celebrity, earning money through your videos, such as through rewards during live streams. The fourth is to create your own brand. This is quite high-end, and if you reach this level, you can make a lot of money. If you compare these 4 ways to make money, the first 3 might still be on the same level, while the fourth is to simply take a plane and fly into the sky. Yukai had never considered creating a brand. He had already expressed his thoughts on travel, and if someone was still determined to make money from it, there was nothing he could do. Finally, he had a place where he could connect with his fans without the barrage of comments. After talking about travel and chatting a lot more, Yukai finally turned off the recording and began post-production. It was now 3 o'clock, and it would be 5 o'clock by the end of post-production. The Communication University Design Department alumni group had a wealth of material, otherwise, this video wouldn't be released until tomorrow. Knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Is it Dinan? Yukai walked over and opened the door, and it was indeed him. Dinan was holding a very handsome surfboard, with a serious expression, and said to Yukai, "Have you really made up your mind not to surf anymore? There's still such a long time in the future, are you really not going to play it?" Before Yukai finished speaking, Dinan raised the surfboard in his hand. "How about the last time? Just accompany me, I have prepared the surfboard for you. If you still feel that surfing is dangerous and the ocean is dangerous after today, then I will not persuade you anymore. I know the best surfing spot." Chapter 125, Remarks on the Release. First, I'd like to thank editor FA for his continued care and the many opportunities he's given me to be featured. Then, to everyone's continued support. This book's collection is probably higher than all my previous books combined. Thank you all. With that out of the way, here are some personal comments. My original motivation for writing this book was to make money. Yukai might be dishonest, because he has cheats, but I don't. My family has always been critical of me doing nothing at home. Writing is like playing games. We live in a small town, and my relatives have lived here their entire lives. Their idea of a proper career is to work a few hours a day for a monthly salary of 2,000 to 3,000 yuan. Such a life is so dark that it seems there's no way out. So, I love traveling, I love freedom, I love extreme sports, and I love to break free from all the constraints I've placed on myself. But when I return home, I still face immense pressure from my relatives and elders. In their eyes, I'm no different from a thug. The pressure of tea picking is truly immense. Writing is my favorite thing. If writing can't lead to a career, then half my life, or perhaps even all of it, is wasted. I'm getting dizzy from talking so much, haha. Let me tell you about the updates since the release. I'm a clumsy typist, so I'm a slow typist. Normally, I'll update 3 times since the release, and tomorrow I'll update 10,000 words. As for adding more chapters, I'll be a little more generous, so I'll set the limit at 2,000 first subscriptions, 10,000 words guaranteed, and for every 500 words above 2,000, I'll add an additional chapter, with no upper limit. If you're the leader, I'll add 1 chapter, and if you're the leader, I'll add 2. If there's more, let me know, haha, I'm a clumsy typist. Really, really. Thank you so much, let's all keep going. It'll be released tomorrow at 12 p.m., so don't forget to subscribe. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.